Morning, everyone. Okay, let's get started on our Learn to Fix and Flip classroom, and then next weekend we're actually going to meet in person for those that are local. So this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the after repaired or renovated value, which is called ARV, which is an acronym. Before we actually go to the house and look at the exterior, we're going to do some investigation and analyzing before we even get in the car. Why waste time going out there? So, but if it makes sense, then you get out there. First thing we'll talk about is the things you should be looking at when we walk around the outside of the house, then we'll get into the inside. We'll show you some before and afters and why we did certain things and what you should be doing. We'll get into financing and costs and type of homes you should buy and what you shouldn't buy, and talk about some exit strategies. Okay, so with that being said, ARV. So what is ARV? We just said it's the after repaired value, and you have to also know the as is value, because when you buy these, and if you're going to get any financing, most of the people, if it's not so much sometimes on private, but definitely if they're any kind of a company, they're going to want both. They're going to want an as is appraisal, and they're going to want an after repaired value appraisal. So what you always do is you give the appraiser a list of all the things you're going to do to the house, so he knows how pretty you're going to make it. So ARV is the after repaired value or renovated value. Sometimes it's called market price, or it would be what pretty houses are selling for in their neighborhood, comps, what we call comparable sales. Value in residential real estate has nothing to do with what you want to get. It has nothing to do with what all the houses are selling for or on the market. It has to do with what house is sold, and we'll get into that in a few moments. Um, so uh, what a realtor would do for you and give you a comparable market analysis, telling you what you could list your home for, would be basically the same method of what we're about to show you. So things you need to know, right? So, well, how do you know if the house is a bargain? And it may be a bargain, but it may not be the right price to buy. If it was going to be a handyman special, well, yet it still may be a bargain. It just wouldn't fit in the scope of things. What we're going to show you in the formula we're about to get into, the fit that makes sure that you would make a sales or a profit. But even if you could buy a bargain, you might be able to sell it differently. Then it doesn't necessarily need it to be fixed and flipped. So how do you know what price you need? What if you want to wholesale it? So you have to build that extra profit into the deal. So here's the formula. So the formula is you take the after repaired value that you find, and we'll show you in a moment how you find that, times 0.7, which is 70%, minus the repairs equals Mayo, which is the maximum allowable offer. So zero point 0.7 is 70%, as I just said. So we don't want to pay Mayo. Um, so an example would be if all the houses in the neighborhood were selling for $100,000, and let's say that you estimated the repairs at 20,000, then you would have the 100,000, which is the ARV, times 0.7 equals 70,000, minus 20,000 for repairs, then $50,000 would be Mayo. Um, who knows what Murphy's Law says? Let me go back to that for a second. I got ahead of myself. I thought it was going to show something else, but it comes up the slide after this. So, and we're going to get into in a few slides and explain to you why we discounted it at 30% and what that 30% discount means. So, who knows what Murphy's Law says? Anybody? Just shout it out. No one knows what Murphy's Law is?
Anything that could happen wrong will happen.
And usually on the good side or the bad side?
On the
Like bad.
challenging side, how about that?
Okay, I like that answer. Okay, so Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will. And I can almost guarantee you that when you're working on a fix and flip, he'll come knocking at your door way too often, too many times. When you're doing a fix and flip, there's a lot of hidden things, and that's why today we're going to show you the things that you don't want to miss. If you're doing new construction, you don't really have to worry about that, other than, maybe the weather or something. But, it's cut and dry. But in a handyman special doing a fix and flip, you don't have x-ray vision to see what's inside the walls. There are home inspectors that use infrared cameras that can tell you somewhat, but still there's a lot of hiddens which you'll see as we go through today's presentation. So understanding ARV and Mayo. So why do we discount ARV by 30%? As I mentioned, I would tell you why. So 20% represents the gross sale profits on the sale. So if we, using the example that we showed of the $100,000, if we were at closing, then theoretically, $80,000, we should be all in with acquisition cost of the property, the holding costs, financing costs, repair costs, and commissions. So in a perfect world, if everything worked out, you'd walk away with a check for $20,000. The other 10% represents the closing cost to purchase as well as to sell. Now, on the backside, we're usually going to list it in the multiple listing, and we'll do a flat fee listing, which can cost you just $200 to $500, depending on what services you want from the agent, from the broker that's selling you that. But then we put the 3%. So we build the 3% in, but you're going to go ahead and advertise it. We recommend that you do an open house. We have a lot of big flags. We have those big tall flags that we put out. We have a lot of signage. So we do it up, and uh, if you sell it that way, great. If not, then put it into Zillow and put it in the Zillow. And at least try for 2 weeks to sell it yourself. At the end of the 2 weeks, if you haven't listed in the multiple listing, and you can do it simultaneously if you want, because obviously time is money, and the faster you turn the money around, the less interest you're going to have, less holding costs, and it's just time to move on to the next one, get your profit. So time makes it, and you have a much better chance of when you put it in the multiple listing of selling it, but that doesn't mean you can't sell it yourself. A lot of times, especially, you should make a flyer and perhaps maybe go put it and have somebody go put it in the neighborhood, the same development, because you never know. Somebody says, "Hey, I love my child to live here, or my son, or a friend, or whatever. Hey, there's a house just came available." So your first recommendations for referrals would be the people living in that development, and of course, many of them will be watching the progress. A lot of times we take the ugliest house in the neighborhood, turn it into the prettiest, and people are watching your progress, and they stop by and they talk to you, and sometimes you've already got a built-in sale, they're just waiting for you to finish it. Speaking on that, which is really not part of the presentation, but we don't recommend, especially during the construction, to let anybody in the house for liability reasons, and it can ruin they don't have the foresight to see what it's going to look like, and the condition that you showed to them may really turn them off. So don't bring them in until you're done. So that leaves still 7% left over of that 10% for the closing costs. If we spend three on and typically closing cost is around 2.5% of the sales price. So if it's 2.5 on the front side, 2.5 on the back side, that's 5% plus the three for real estate commission. Then we're still have 2% left over, and that 2% you could use perhaps for holding costs. Per diem per day. You have obviously insurance. You have, if you're borrowing money, there's an interest charge per day. You'll have real estate taxes, so it could cover some of that. So what should you pay to wholesale the property? Now that means if you want to wholesale it, most of the fix and flippers would be very happy to buy it at Mayo. So if you could sell it at Mayo, then you'd have to buy it below Mayo in order to make the spread. So in that case, using the same example that we just showed, so you would want to make, let's say, a $10,000 fee. So now you would have to buy it at 40,000, so you could sell it to a rehabber at 50,000, who knows the formula and would be happy. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, so considerations now for the ARV of what we would do to come up with the price for that. So what we want to do, and we call them comps, it's comparables. They should be the two most expensive homes in that neighborhood. When we do a fix and flip or a fix and hold, because it doesn't have to always be a flip, you could be buying it as a landlord. And obviously, if you can buy them this way, you're going to build yourself in a lot of equity, which is good. When it helps you then when you go to refinancing, if you decide to do that with the 80/20, so that 20%, which is what we're building in for our profit, would be your equity. And if you're going to fix it for retail to sell it, you want to make sure yours is the prettiest house on that neighborhood. So that's why we tell you to take the most two expensive homes, because more than likely the two most expensive homes were renovated, or they just were, a lot of times it's renovated over years, where they're doing a little bit each year, and then they get to the point where maybe children are in high school. As soon as they graduate, then they sell the house. So we want the two most expensive homes in the neighborhood. They need to be within a quarter mile of the target property. If you can't find one, then you go out a half a mile, but to ensure that it's a similar neighborhood. If it's a big neighborhood, sometimes one neighborhood, you can be a half a mile away. It would be a pretty big neighborhood. But the best comps is the ones that are right in the same neighborhood because they have all the amenities, whether it be proximity to the school, which the schools are very important. And sometimes there could be two elementary schools in the same city. That happens a lot. And so if one is in one, and that's the better elementary school that's more desirable, then you should not really use a comp that's in the other elementary school because it's just school systems definitely affect the price. You'll notice that no matter where it is in the United States, that when the school system is really high end, the prices of the homes follow that. So, in addition, it must be sold within the last 6 months. We know that the market changes drastically, but be aware that if you buy the house, and it's okay, but just be aware of what I'm about to tell you. And let's say that all of your comps, or maybe there was only two comps that you could find, and both were 5 months ago. By the time that you finish your home, obviously you're not going to buy it, turn around and renovate it and sell it within 1 month. So, because 99% of the time that when you do sell it retail, you're going to have somebody that's going to traditionally buy it and they're going to put a deposit, a down payment, and get financing. Well, when the bank wants to do financing, they send out their own appraiser and they have got strict rules that they have to follow, and they wouldn't be able to use those because at this point, those comps that you use would be more than 6 months old. This can hurt you sometimes because all of a sudden somebody can put a house on the market um, and sell it for less and it's equal to those pretty houses and sell it for less. And we had that happen where a homeowner owned the home for 20 years. We're not really not sure, but let's say it was 20 years. So their cost basis was so much less than what we paid, and we were shooting for about a $35,000 profit. And they put the house on the market and sold it, and it closed. We didn't know, but it was closed just about the time we were about to list ours for $35,000 less. There was no way in the world that we could get a comp because that would have been the perfect comp because it's the closest, the newest, size was all the same. So we got lucky and we found a buyer that on a 1031 exchange who was a cash sale and they didn't need an appraisal. But otherwise you can get hurt. And that's the difference between residential, it's the nature of the beast, versus commercial. In residential, you don't control the price. You can do forced appreciation, and obviously that's what we're doing. But we're going to show you towards when we get into the ones that we've already done. And give you some examples. I'll show you how we added square footage to a home. That's forced appreciation, regardless of what houses have sold for. So it goes by that, and you could get hurt. Whereas in commercial, you control how much the value of the property is worth by how much it earns. So a little bit of a difference, but there's nothing you can do. That's the way it works. Everybody has to live by the same things. So in order to find them, where are you going to find these? Well, if you have access to the multiple listing, and we have some agents on here, but many agents will give you access to the multiple listing just for doing searches, or they'll set up searches for you, give them keywords that you tell them to plug in. And once they do that, you tell them the area. Every morning, you'll have an email from that agent. Maybe they put in handyman special, TLC, needs tender loving care, investor special, needs work, whatever, any of those keywords. So the agent sets up a search for you, and every time that a new listing shows up or a price reduction that has any of those keywords in the description, that home will be sent to you. You certainly can go on Zillow. Matter of fact, there's probably a good majority of the homes are even if they're listed with an agent, they still go on Zillow, and most of the time that's where a buyer starts. But certainly Zillow. Thing I like about Zillow is that when you go there, there's a drop down menu, and that drop down menu you have a choice of three things: sold, for sale, or for rent. So you would put it on sold, and then of course we've already put in the address of the home that you're looking to do a comp on that you want to buy. And then when you do the drop down menu, it'll superimpose little yellow squares on all the houses that have sold, and you bring it to a satellite view so you actually see the lot lines. You see the top of the house. It's just like Google Earth or anything like that, but yet it superimposes, and now you know which ones are sold. And if they're right across the street or next door, that's going to be your perfect comp. So you put your mouse over it and then click on it. It'll give you the information as to when it was sold and the square footage and the price that it sold for. There's a lot of softwares out there, which definitely, listen, no matter what type of real estate creative that you're doing to be an investor, you need leads. lead to offers, and offers lead to deals. And they say on average, there's all exceptions to everything, but on average, the rule of thumb is 20 offers to get a deal. Well, in order to make 20 offers, you might have to look at 100 properties. That doesn't mean you're going to scrutinize 100 of them, but junk doesn't, and you wheedle through the 100 to maybe down to 20 or 30 that look like it would fit the mold, and then you go through that and you narrow it down. And before you know it, you have some homes to make some offers on. So PropStream is a really good one. Eric uses PropStream, and we do we have a deal, or did that expire, Eric, on the offer for the PropStream?
Believe the deal is going through the end of April, but I can confirm. So if anybody's interested, we can talk about that later.
And then there's another one called Connected Invest. There's a few of them out there. I think PropStream is probably one of the most easiest to use and best. Okay, so after repaired value versus comps. So the comp should be within 20% of the square footage of the target property. The target property is the one that you want to buy. So, for an example, let's say the subject house that you're looking to buy is 2,000 square feet. So we want to calculate what would 20% of 2,000 square feet be. If you're not good at math, use 10%. When you use the 10, I know this is simplistic, but I tell it sometimes, I can't spell, but I'm great with math, and some people are just the opposite. If you're using the 10% rule, there could never be any other digits in the numbers other than twos and zeros. So that would mean then it's 200 square feet would be 10%, just double it. Or if you know how to do math, then it's 400 square feet. So if it's 400 square feet, it could be smaller or larger. So that means that you could use comparables as small as 1,600 square feet, which would be 400 feet smaller, or 2,400 square feet, which is 400 square feet bigger. So any place in between these two is what you could use. What you'll find in the industry, that the smaller, if you were looking at a 2,000 square foot home and you saw a 900 square foot home, the price per square foot on the 900 square foot home is going to be much higher. Can't use it. And going the opposite way, if you saw a 4,000 square foot home, as the square foot goes up, generally the price per square foot comes down, unless it's very customized. You can have two houses that are 4,000 square feet. One's got carpeting and laminate countertops, and the other one's got travertine and marble floors and hardwood floors, and it's got granite or quartz, and it's got all the upgrades. Doesn't change the size of the square footage of the home, but it changes the price per square foot. So that's why we don't use the larger ones unless, of course, it's an upscale. Uh, And so now let's say that while you're doing that, you find a house that's sold and it's 2,350 square feet. It's within the last 6 months. It's within the quarter mile. And if you can't find one with quarter mile, I think the slide before you showed you can go out a half a mile. Uh, Sometimes it's such a unique property, you can't find one unless you go out a mile or two. And sometimes that's the best you can do, or you might have to use a cost approach. But this is the easiest way. This is not 100% of how an appraiser does it, but this is how, with pluses and minuses, that an agent would do it. But more importantly, we're investors, and this is how we're going to do it. This is the simplest way for you to do it. So if that house for 293,750, it's sold within the last 6 months, and the sales price of square footage, you want to find out what it was. So you divide the sales price by the square footage, and it'll give you what it is sell for price per square foot, which is what the PSF stands for, price per square foot. So you would then divide the 2,350 into the 293, and it tells you it sold at 125 per square foot. Well, now you're just going to take that 125 and multiply it times the 2,000 square foot home, and that tells us that on a square foot basis only, that house is now worth $250,000. Everybody follow that so far? Any questions on that? That's the basis, with like a foundation for building a home. You need to understand that before we move on a little further. But any questions on that? Okay, if there's no questions on that, then let's move forward. So there's other conditions that we have to consider. What if it has a pool? What if it's lakefront or golf front? Or these are going to add more value to the house or subtract value. Um, because based on whether or not the house that you're looking at, you're either going to add or subtract. Like for pools, we use $10,000 as the value. You're not going to build a pool for 10,000, especially like this one here with a hot tub in it, or jacuzzi, whatever it is. Well, jacuzzi is a brand name. It would be jetted. Um, but that's all we're going to add for value on a resale. So based on that, if the comp does not have a pool, right? So we know that the comp sold for 293, subject home with the pool, 125 per square foot, we came to 250. But now your house that you want to buy, the 2000, has the pool, the comp doesn't have it, so you now add $10,000. So based on the square footage being worth 250 and adding the 10, so now the new after repaired value of the house that you want to buy comfortably would be $260,000. The opposite of it, obviously, if the comp has the pool and yours doesn't have the pool, then you're going to have to subtract it and go the opposite way. So now your house, you know, on a square footage basis, it was worth 250, but for 293, 750, that house had a pool, and your 2,000 square foot one doesn't. So you subtracted 10,000, and now you're down to 240. You're going to do the same thing with lakefront, golf, and beachfront. It may be a little more difficult to ascertain what they sold for. You may not find one that sold within the last 6 months. I don't care if you go back a year, it'll always be pretty similar, the extra price that they get for the lakefront. So, so maybe last year you find one that sold on lakefront, and then you find one across the street that didn't have lakefront, didn't even have a view, and maybe you can find a few, and you come up with a benchmark that, oh, it's $20,000 difference, it's $30,000 difference, whatever it may be. And some of the, especially here in Florida and other areas of, around the country, but here in Florida we have a lot of what we call lake fronts, but they're really retention ponds. But the actual lakes, then there are some of them that are chain of lakes where you can take boating and you go from one to the next, and those generally command more money. So you'd want to make sure that you're comparing, if it's one of those, that you're comparing one that's also on that chain of lakes, and not going out a mile or half a mile away where it's on a different lake, where that's the only lake that you can boat around in. And you'll do the same thing with golf course and beachfronts. So you have to take all of that into consideration, right? Okay, any questions on that, as far as how to come up with the comp, where to find the comps, and how to come up with the pricing on that? Because that's the last slide. We're going to talk about this.
You guys can either open your mics or put it in the chat if you have a question.
What would be the like what would you use for like golf courses and beachfronts? Like what price range would you use for that to
Well,
subtract that?
again, as I was saying, if you can't find one, listen, comps is only based on what's sold. And so if
Right.
you can't find something, if it was golf front or lakefront, or beachfront, you got to watch out because that's unique. And usually, we're not doing too much of that. You're going to get into the higher end of houses most of the time on that. But you will find, especially depending where you are, lakefronts and golf course. That's very popular, especially in Florida and many other states. So
Right.
if you didn't find one in 6 months, then maybe last year, and you find last year that you find a house that sold in the 2,000 square foot range, the parameters of the size. And even if it wasn't the size, it doesn't matter. Maybe you find a 3,000, so you're working on a 2,000, but you find a 3,500 square foot home that was lakefront, and then you find a 3,500 square foot, or within the 20% of the 3,500, right, which would be 700 square feet. That's what did that sell for across the street from the lakefront? And if you find out that it's a 20,000 or a $30,000 spread, then generally you'll be comfortable enough to use that for today's market. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. You just want
Thank
to find out what the extra that they're getting, regardless of when it was sold. It's usually that spread will be pretty much the same year after year. Okay. So before we get to the house and do an exterior walk around, the first thing that you should do before you get in your car is do the math. Do what we just did, because you're going to do that from the computer anyway. We just said that. You're going to go to either MLS, you're going to go online, somehow you're going to do it. And so the first thing you want to do is say, okay, does it fit the math? Everything we do as investors is about the math. No, get the emotions out of it. Yeah, some things you can get a little emotional about. You'll be excited and happy, but the decision to buy should not be an emotional decision. When you sell to an end buyer, That's an emotional buy backed by logic. Yours is the other way around. It's got to be logical buying backed by the emotions. Right? You know, if it's going to bother you to do it, then don't do it. If you're going to be happy to do it, fine. But it's still the criteria is based on money. If the math makes sense, we do it. If the math doesn't make sense, then it's not a deal. So first thing we want to do is that. Second thing I want to do then, if it passes that muster, then, and usually a lot of that's happening at the same time, but like on Zillow and many other places, it has what's called the street view. So you go to the street view, and now you can drive that neighborhood, because what's the sense of going out if everything makes sense, but you didn't know that next door or directly across the street is a real dump. It's an eyesore. You got no control. You can't fix that house up. You can't force those people to clean it up. Even if you offer to do it for them, they may not let you do it. So I want to know that before I go out there. There's just no sense in going out if the neighborhood is really sucks, or if the next door neighbor sucks, or across the street. You don't want that. So that's why it's important. And then you could also get different views. Sometimes you don't have enough photographs that's in the listing, but if you do the street view and you move a little bit down from it, you go to the left, and then you turn the camera a little bit because you have control of that, and you zoom in, you might be able to see the side of the house or a different view of it, especially when it's a corner house. Then you go two different streets to look at it. So important to do that. So I do all of the work from home, and and looking at the interiors and getting an idea, you'll know that by the end of today. But I'm going to tell you right now that on average, a fix and flip is $35,000 to $45,000. It's rare that they're smaller. They can be when it's just a cosmetic flip. Yeah, and always round everything up to 5,000 and round up. So something, if you think that the repair costs are going to be seventies $200, no, I'm going to round it up to $7,500, or I'm going to round it up to 10,000. So I'd rather do it in 5,000 increments. It's very rare that, if you say it's going to be, oh, it's just going to cost me like $2,800. No, it's going to cost you 5,000. So we do it that way. So based on that, you'll learn to get a quick feel whether or not this is an average flip. If it's a lot of majors, the majors we're going to get into. What are the majors? Roofs, windows, plumbing, electric. If you have to redo all of those, each one of those is a major, right? Cosmetic, even though they're expensive, we're always going to probably upgrade bathrooms, upgrade kitchens, upgrade flooring. That's all part of the normal of that 35 to 45,000. But if you have all of that, and then all of a sudden you have roof and windows, you have roof and AC, then you're going to get into more expensive. So based on the math, again, I'm going to use $45,000 and see if the R formula works. And if all of that passes mustard, then it's time to drive to the house. And a lot of times I'll drive and I'll pass the house, just drive around a little bit and see the neighborhood, even though I did it before virtually. Now I'm going to be there, and then pull back into the driveway. Obviously, when you get to the house, here's the things that we're going to look at. So a lot of things that you consider before you make an offer, including how much will the condition of each item impact your offer amount, right? So we want to walk around the outside of the house. We're going to observe the foundation for cracks and a lot of different things we're going to do. But the first thing I want to do when I get there is to walk around the exterior. So what are we going to see on the exterior? Well, we're going to ascertain whether or not this is septic or whether it's sewer. We're going to look at the windows. Even without operating them, you can sometimes tell from the outside. They may be cracked. There could be wood over some of them. Excuse me, the old metal ones, are they ugly? Are they dark color? And you'll see if cosmetics from the outside, that white always looks prettier. But if they're in good shape, we're not going to change them if they're the dark or the bronze color. What about the AC? We're going to look at the compressor outside. First thing we're going to look at is look at the roof. And if the roof has got different color shingles on it, it probably had some leaks and they did a patch, even though it's ugly looking, but they weren't concerned with that. They knew they needed a new roof, and they would just maybe have a friend, or they had some extra shingles and they put a different color up there. That's obviously a telltale sign that there had been a leak inside the house. So wherever that position of that is, when I go inside, I want to look in that, and I'm going to look up and see if there's stains in that area, or I'm tall, but if you can't reach, you get maybe something a little, but be careful, just press gently. Better if you're tall, because you can tell whether or not it's new or is an old stain. You'll tell if it's soggy or not. So there's a lot of things we're going to look at on the outside. I'm going to break that down for you in the next couple of slides of what we want to look at. The electric, how it comes in, service drop. means where does it come in? That's called the service. Does the foundation have any cracks in it? Because if it does, when I go inside, I want to look at that area, make sure that the doors and windows are still operating properly, that it didn't affect it. Okay. So when we get there, we talked about that we're going to find out whether or not it's got sewers or whether it has septic or not. So one of the things that you'll look for is this here. This is a clean out. This is generally going to be within 2 feet of the house. It's generally in the flower bed, and sometimes it's covered over because they put mulch over the years. But you'll find this, and you step back from the house, and there's a pipe about the same size. This is either 3 or 4 inches sticking out of the roof, and that's called your main vent stack. And wherever that is back up from that. So you got to walk back yourself away from the house and look at the front, start there. And if you see that, then walk back towards the house and look right underneath that, and then kick maybe the dirt around and see if you find that. If you do that, if you do find that in the front, what that's telling you is doesn't tell you if it's septic or sewer, but it tells you that the septic or sewer is in the front, not in the rear. And if you can't find one of these in the front, then go in the back of the house, because sometimes it's in the back. A lot of times, if it's a septic, it's going to be in the back, but sometimes the sewers go out the back as well to a different street. So that'll just tell you where it's located, is what that is. This is for the wells. Does it have city water? Does it have a well? Sometimes you'll find this equipment on the property, but it does have city water. This is just for irrigation, because the water for the water companies charge you more for the sewer than they do for the water they send you. The water they send you, they just chlorinate. The water that you send back to them, they've got to do a lot of treatment. It's more expensive. So if you notice, when you look at if you have municipal water and sewers, and you look at your bill, the gallonage is more expensive for the gallons that you sent back than it is what you received. So therefore, if you put a well in, then you're not going to use as much for the sprinkling to run up your bill. Sometimes you can get 2 meters when you have city water, but that's a whole different ball game as far as so that you don't get charged the sewage on the 1 meter. So the difference between what you're seeing here is this is what is more preferable than this here. This is what's called a deep well. This is a shallow well. Both systems will have some kind of a pressure tank and gauges and all the stuff that we're not going to get into that right at the moment. But just know that this is just a shaft. It's the casing. It's called well casing, and it's metal. Right now you see PVC, and it can be PVC bound down into the ground, but usually it's metal, and then they attach it to PVC. And that is, especially in Florida where you have sand, if you're drilling a hole until you get into the limestone, when you take the drill bit out, the hole's going to collapse because it's just sand. So, and if you're in the northern areas, then you got to drill through the topsoil, and then the subsurface, and until you get into rock, maybe you're in granite or something, and the hole that's drilled in the rock. We're here in Florida. The hole that's drilled into limestone does not collapse; it stays open. So they send the casing down until they get to that, and so that's what you have. And then the pump for that is way down inside that. That pump could be set at 100 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, where this is a shallow well, so the pump is above ground, and these lose priming, right? And then you got to reprime it because it's going to need suction. Also, you could have more pollution because the well is shallow. It can run dry because the water table. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the house, but these are just things you need to be aware of. So you can ascertain whether or not you've got city water or city sewer. Obviously, when you walk in the front of the house, you can look for there's a little metal cover to a box that's in the ground, and that's where the meter is for the city water. So to check whether or not the house is on septic or sewer, and you're not sure and you couldn't find, then walk out into the street and see if it has any manhole covers, because it'll let you know. Now, if you come out into the street and you see this, do you think that is got city sewers for sanitation? Nope. It says storm sewer, so that's for your gutters. Not all places have gutters, but the ones that are along the street that have the gutters, that's collecting water, that's just a manhole for them to get into the sewer system to clean it out. A lot of times, especially before a hurricane or something like that, they go around with the big vacuum machines and they open it up, and that's how they cleaned it out. But if you see another type and it says sanitary on it, then that is a sanitary sewer. That's the wastewater going back. So if you see that, you know you have. Now, maybe right in front of the house you don't find one, so walk a few houses to the right, a few houses to the left, and see if you spot one. If you're near another intersection, walk out to the other road and see. Now, that doesn't tell you if you have sewers because they may not be a line down your street, but the main road does have it. And usually it's way too expensive for you as a fix and flip to run a new line out to that. So you don't want to do that. That means you may have, so there could be on it's a corner piece of property. You may be lucky enough to maybe tap into the sewer. But if the street that you're on doesn't have it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy. You should not be afraid to buy houses with septic systems, and we're going to get into that next. So, any questions on what these mean? I think it's pretty self-explanatory that that's a storm sewer versus sanitary sewers, right? Easy way to tell. So, what if it has a septic system? Don't be afraid of them. Water in a septic system just flows out into a tank. We have fields out there where the ground, this would be the fields, it flows in. This would be the bank tank. The inlet is higher than the outlet, so it's always full. And then the sludge builds up to the top. And every 3, 4, or 5 years, depending on the usage, you should have this pumped out. Because if this sludge builds up to the top and goes out into these fields, you'll be putting new fields in. When you buy the house, obviously, we want to, and I definitely recommend, you guys don't have the experience. I'm third generation in the plumbing industry. Dad put tools in my hand at 7 years old. By the time I was 16, Dad worked in the union. He was a union plumber, and he would come home early, and he had a side job that he built a business, but it wasn't enough for him to quit his full-time job. And I would go out and I would do my school homework when I got home. Mom would have the dinner made, and we'd go out about 4:30, 5 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock, and do some side jobs. By the time I was 16, I knew so much, I would just take out Dad's truck and do the service work on the ones I could before he got home. So I have an extensive background. Then when I got married, I started to be a builder. After I took my first creative financing class in 1981, decided to be an investor. Interest rates were real high, but I got turned on to building modular homes, and I built a little over 200 of them. So I've put many septic systems in. But when we buy them, I started saying that you should get a home inspection. You do all what I'm going to teach you this morning, but I definitely, if it's a buy decision, then you should definitely make your offer subject to a home inspection. You can't do that if you're buying the house from a wholesaler. They won't let you. They'll let you, but they won't let you tie the property up subject to an inspection. So if you do a home inspection on it, you may be wasting your money, which more than likely you will. Because while you're doing that, another investor puts a deposit down, you just lost, and they're not going to pay you, reimburse you for it. But if you can do a subject to an inspection, and you bring out a home inspector, home inspectors don't do septic inspections. So you can spend the money, and it may pay to do it. That's up to you. You could make a deal maybe with the seller where you say, listen, I'm going to have your septic tank pumped out. If I don't buy the house, can you reimburse me for the pump out? There's another test that you can do, but the test is only about $125. But part of pumping it out, if the tank was empty, then the company that's cleaning it for you can then tell you whether or not the tank itself is cracked, because they got to clean it out first. So this is what's happening here. That's what this hose is. The nastiness, and the first thing they do when they get out there, the test that you could pay for is called a flow test, where the septic company would come out. They'd come out with a 5-gallon bucket. They'll go to one of your hose bibs and fill up that bucket, and they'll time it. And let's say it takes 5 minutes to fill that gallon. So that 5 gallons. So they know that the well is pumping at 5 gallons per minute. So now what they'll do is then there's an inlet. If I go back to the slide before, there's an inlet manhole cover and there's an out manhole cover, and they can uncover both of them and look inside of it, especially if there's trees around the fields over here. They'll look to make sure there's no roots, because the roots sometimes will grow in and block this, and they'll see that right away. But if not, and it's clear, then they'll do what's called a flow test. So before they pump it out, they'll take the hose and start filling it up, and they can watch on the outlet side and tell whether or not the water's rising up or if it's staying the same, if it's out, what percentage the fields are operating at. Are they at 50%, 30%, 70%? So they'll make a recommendation to you whether or not you have to change the fields. So here's a house that Eric and I did. There's a couple of houses. This particular one you're looking at had a septic tank, but the fields were no good. So we saved the tank. Let me see, is this the one I'm looking at? Yeah. And so we put new fields in here, which is what's happened is that fields are just basically gravel with perforated pipe, and then the ground absorbs it. Some of it percolates up to the sky, and the sun evaporates it. There is no new water. The water that we drink is water that was here thousands of years ago. It just gets recycled and it gets purified by the sky. Even the water that evaporates out of the septic system is going up to the sky, but then it's purified. All the impurities stay behind, just like when you use still water. That's a way of purifying water. So that was what you might have to do. This was another one of our rentals that we had to do the same thing. We had to add and change the fields. So sometimes you have to do that. And when it comes out of the tank, it's solid pipe. And then when it goes into the fields, it will be perforated pipe filled over gravel. And that's how you do it. Okay, so any questions on septic systems before I move on? I don't want to spend too much, I didn't want to spend much time on them because I can spend all day talking about them. Okay, if no questions on that, then the next thing is as you're walking around, especially if you're here in Florida, you're going to find the compressor for the air conditioning system. And what I want you to do is take a picture of the serial numbers. And some of them will actually say, let me blow this up here. So some of them will actually have a manufacturer date, like this one tells you that it was manufactured in April of 2010. But sometimes it won't have that, and it'll just have some numbers, and it won't tell you this on there. Here it's telling this just for explanation, telling you that in this particular manufacturer, that the first set of numbers represents the week it was manufactured. So it was the second week of the year 2019 is when this was manufactured. So you take a photo of it, and then you Google, depending what brand it is, if it's a Carrier, a Train, a Goodman, there's many different ones, and you say, how do you find the manufacturer date? And it'll tell you. And so that's what you do. You can do the same thing on hot water tanks. When you go inside and you look at the air handler, you do the same thing. So that's going to let you know. And then, of course, just looking at it, is it rusty? Is it nasty? Is it falling over? You can get an idea, whoops, went the wrong way, of whether or not the quality of it. Okay. So then the next thing you're going to look at is you want to look at the walls and the foundation. You really should have looked up at my slides. I usually look up first at the roof because that's as you're approaching the property, you're going to see it anyway. And we're seeing it for two different reasons. One, cosmetically, which we'll get into, but more importantly, the condition of it. But the foundation itself, we want to make sure that it doesn't have cracks in it that are not a sinkhole, but it could be the foundation settling. When they build a house, the first thing they do is if the blue parameter that I have around the slide here was the house, that would be the foundation. Well, before they build the walls, which the walls could be built out of concrete block like this here, it could be poured, or it could be concrete block coming out of the ground, maybe 18 inches, and then wood framed, and then maybe covered over with stucco, or it could have wood siding, you wouldn't know. But let's talk about the ones that are not wood sided, that are concrete. And if they're concrete block or poured concrete, then they could be faced with brick like these two here. Brick is not structural. That's just a cosmetic, like putting wood siding over the wood, or nailing wood siding up over concrete block. But when we build that house, as I was saying, the perimeter, the blue. So the first thing you put in is footings. Footings is if you're going to use this is concrete block, and you can only look and measure, if you were out there, the distance from here to here. You can measure, but what you can't measure is how wide they are, and they could either be 8 inches, they could be 10 inches, they could be 12 inches. And so depending on what the width is, the standard is 8 inch, especially if it's all above ground, and it's not. In Florida, we don't have basements. If you're sinking it below ground, then you probably be using 12-inch block because it's just stronger. But the footings that the block sits on top of is poured concrete. So let's say we're using 8 inch, then the footing would be 16 inches wide and would be 1 foot thick, or 8 inches thick, depending on, because these would be 8-inch block. So it's double the width, and that expresses when they put the foundation on it, that it sends the weight out. So it's kind of like a T, if you think about it, that you have your foundation, your footer, and then you have your foundation. Well, what happens in Florida and many other areas, if you don't have gutters and the water's rolling off the roof into one spot, and it washes away the sand underneath those footers, then the foundation is actually dropping in that spot. And so it could cause this. Now, this is a bigger crack. So that is a foundation settling because it's way more than a 16th of an inch. Whereas if it's just a cosmetic crack, like this is what's called a stair cracks, because it's following it. That may just be cosmetic, but if it's like, an eighth of an inch, no big deal. It happens all the time. But if it's breaking the brick, like some of these goes right through the middle of a brick, then that's structural. Or if you're not brick face and it's not, and they didn't cover, like these two photos here, they didn't take concrete and what we call a parge coat or stucco and cover up the block, which obviously is more attractive. Excuse me, my voice is going. So if it's not covered, you'll be able to tell if it's cosmetic. But if it is covered, and you'll still see that it'll follow that forming, but it's just minor, and that it's not structural. If it's this here, it's structural. You go inside the house, so wherever you saw this, go back inside the house, and if you see this, it's definitely structural because the framing itself, everything pulled. Whereas if it's cosmetic, it won't affect the inside. You may not see a crack inside, but let's say this was near where the foundation. I'm going to check the windows. I'm going to check the doors. Do they close properly? Is the gap, the reveal, when the door closes over here, is the gap equal, or is it closer at the top than the bottom? Then it's at a square. So you'll know then structurally if the foundation settled and caused that. Now, if you do find this, that could be very expensive. That can cost you anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 to resupport a foundation. So on those, you're going to definitely put a really low price in because it's going to, and hopefully it was disclosed. But sometimes buyer beware. People don't tell you that, especially if it's a bank foreclosure, or although if it was a government foreclosure like a HUD home, they would put that in the description because FHA, if an FHA underwritten, if that's how the guidelines to lend the money was guidelines of FHA, which is Federal Housing Association, which is under the Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, then when that gets foreclosed, it comes back to the government, and that's a government-owned home, not a bank-owned home. If it's underwritten by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when it gets foreclosed, it goes back to the bank, and that's called an REO. No idea why they call it REO, but that means real estate owned, and that only prefer, even though it's real estate owned, but it's owned by the banks. It's just crazy, but that's what it means. So anyway, moving on. Any questions on the foundations or the air conditioning or the things we've talked about so far? Anything in the chat, Eric?
Really quick, were you saying when you were talking about the brick layering and if the gutters like going wipe that out, were you saying that's more of a cosmetic issue that would be cheaper than if it was something like with cracks in the wall?
Well, you can have cracks that are cosmetic, or you can have cracks in the wall that are structural.
Okay.
Structural will be if it's more than 16th of an inch thick or wide, not long. But what if I was able to get out there with a very small ruler and measure from right. Well, let me put my mouse over here. If I was able to measure from the top of the brick to the mortar that used to be on top of that brick, and that's more than a 16th of an inch, it's an eighth or a quarter inch. I'm going to start to get worried. If it's more than a quarter of an inch, it's structural. If it's
Okay.
smaller than that, it may just be cosmetic because concrete expands and contracts, so it's going to cause cracks. It's inevitable,
Okay.
especially in Florida. So
Got
most of the time, it's cosmetic, not structural. Most of the time that you see cracks on foundations in Florida, most of the time it'll be a cosmetic, so you don't have to worry about too much. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's move on to the electrical, which is really important. So, excuse me, where the electric comes into the house is what we're going to talk about. Sometimes it's overhead, sometimes it's underground. If it's underground, you really don't have a problem of what I'm about to talk to. If it's overhead, is it entering above the roof? This is the best. This where it sticks above the roof. This piece of pipe is called a mask, and then it'll have what's called a weatherhead. I'm going to show you a better picture of it so that the wiring comes in. When the wiring comes in from the road, as it's pitched down, it's not going to point towards this because if pitch, because the water rolling on the wire would roll down inside the meter and short it out. So there's something called a service loop. You'll see a drip, so that the water would roll off. You'll see on the next slide. But if the electric comes in underneath, this is called the eaves of the house over here, and this is called the fascia over here, where the gutters would be attached to. Many times the electric, as you'll see in the next photographs, slides, the electric comes in below. That is okay if you don't have to upgrade anything. It's pre-existing non-conforming. If you were building a new house, or if you have to change that meter out because it's only a 100 amp meter and you need 150 or 200 amp, you're going to have to upgrade it. So that's important to know. So look to, there's two things. Where does the electric come into the house? And does the wire from the pole go underneath the eaves? That's really important to know. So as you can see here, it's coming under the eaves, right? This is here it came underground. And here it's being set up. This is a new meter pan. Let me blow that up a little bit for you. So here's a new meter pan so obviously, and I don't think it's the same house, it's a different house, but the electric came in before underneath. And what the electrician does is, so let's say, it's an older home, and maybe the house had a gas hot water tank, had a gas heater, had a gas stove, and you don't want to go back with gas, you're going back with electric. That means that the amperage that you need for that house is going to be higher. And if you only had a 100 amp service because it's an older home, you're going to have to upgrade that. So that needs a licensed electrician. Nobody else can do that. And the first thing that once you sign up with the electrician, he applies for his permit. The first thing he does is he contacts the power company and he has them come out and shut off the electric. Once they shut off the electric, then he can then disconnect the old meter pan, and the wire will be disconnected already. The power company would have done that. And now he can install this mask. It's a piece of galvanized, and there's codes to how far above it, how far back from the roof it has to be. And then he sets this all up. Then he calls for an inspection. The electrical inspector comes out, says this looks done, this is good, meets all the code. And at that point, then the electric company will come out and energize, and they'll put the new meter in. So if it comes under the eaves and you miss this and you do have to upgrade the electric, that's expensive to do a new meter pan and put this mask up above. You don't always have to put a mask, but you may have to change the meter. The electric could come above. It could be an old, or maybe something changed it years ago, but it may have the mask, but it's not the right size electric. But if in that case, you wouldn't have to do this. But if you have to do this part, that's $1,200 or $1,500 to do this. So you don't want to miss that. So I mentioned before, now here's a better picture to show you what that weatherhead looks like. It's open, but you see here, there's a service strip. So if the wire is coming in, let's blow that up a little bit here. So if the wire is coming in from the road and it was pitched downhill, maybe it's the pole is up here where my hand is, right? And it's driving down and it was coming down right into there, the water would roll down in there. So here, if it is water, it's going to drip off of here and then drip onto the roof. So that's called a service loop or a drip loop. Bring that back down where it was. Okay, so you can see the service wire coming in, weatherhead and mask, right? And it has to be, if it's on the side of the house, it can do that because it can come up higher than the eaves. It can come up, but usually it comes to the front or the side, but sometimes it can come on the side. So it's got to be this. You don't have to worry about this. The electrician's going to know this, of how many feet from the edge of the roof in that it has to be, how high it can be above the roof, all those things. I have a bunch of it in here, but that's just too much detail. You don't need to know that. So here's an older home you can see, and this has the old Jalis windows, and if this wasn't changed, or you're out there painting your house for a homeowner, or you bring a contractor in who's going to change these windows, and he's got his roof up, ladder up there, and he slides into this, the power coming in from the power company does not have a circuit breaker. It's got no shut-offs. It's high voltage live all the time. There's no protection like we have inside the house with GFI breakers where, if you have a short, it shuts the power off to save you and not kill you. So that's why we wouldn't want it. You wouldn't want it near an open window where somebody could reach their hand up, or near a balcony or anything like that. So there's codes to that. So you can see that here where the power was coming in before, right, that's going to have to be changed and new put up above the roof. So here's a little more of a diagram showing you the same thing, where it would be coming in, and then you'd have to put the meter in And so I'm going to bring up a few of the specs, but you don't have to worry about these here. These are all the different specs. If you want to take a photo of it, when I put up the last one, and I believe there's one more. Okay, so, it's got to be a maximum of 6 feet. You don't really need to all these. Just take a photo of that if you're interested. It's immaterial for us to go over it. You're not going to do that work, and it's not going to get passed by the inspection, the very beginning, because that's going to be the first inspection that's going to be done. So if that's not done to code, your electrician will be redoing it. So you don't have to worry about that. I just want you to know that you need to have it done because of rate of whether or not it's coming under the eaves. That's the part that I want you to look for. And if it is, it may be a potential problem for you. If the power, if it's a 200 amp or 150 amp and the amperage is sufficient and it's coming underneath the eaves and there's nothing that we're about to show you now, that it's not the wrong type of panel boxes or everything, and you don't need to change it, you leave it alone. I mean, you can spend the money if you want to. That's up to you. If you're conscious, or morals, but there's no reason to do it and spend, a couple of $1,000s to change it. Now, something that I mentioned earlier before we got started, those that were on, I said, even if you're not buying the house to fix it and you're buying it as a rental, you want to know there are certain things that are dangerous, and that is the panel box. The circuit, it's called a circuit breaker or panel box. And the reason that we have a circuit breaker box, these are um, the breakers right here, is it's a safety reason. They're supposed to trip so that, they say, oh, and it happens a lot in the winter time where people have electric heaters and they put an extension cord and they plug 2 or 3 of them into it, and the wire is not the right size gauge, the thickness, so it heats up and it causes a fire inside the wall. Well, circuit breakers would sense that, or they would sense a short and trip so you don't get electrocuted. Or if you're near water and something falls in and you're getting electrocuted, the ground fault interceptors are supposed to shut off real quick so you don't get killed. Well, brands made by Federal Pacific and Zenco, they're both no longer manufactured. Federal Pacific is out of business. They were sued, class action lawsuits. You still find them in houses. Well, obviously the house didn't burn down, but the problem with these here, and there was class action lawsuits, many houses did burn down. People got killed, people got hurt because the circuit breakers won't trip. So if you find a house like this, that's a safety problem. You can guarantee that if you don't catch this, and as I mentioned earlier, when you sell this, your buyer is going to get a home inspection. I talked about appraisals, but they're going to get a home inspection. And that home inspector is going to definitely find certain things they're not going to miss, and they're not going to miss the Federal Pacific panel box. And they're going to warn you about that. And you're not going to buy the house unless the seller changes it or gives you a concession for the price that you can change it. One day it has to be addressed. So you don't want to miss that. If you see this, you have to change it out, and the cost to change out, if that's all you were doing was changing out the panel box, nothing with the meter, nothing with the wires outside, because all you do is change this inside, you're still talking about anywhere on a really low price of $1,000, probably more like $1,200 to $2,000, depending on where you're located, or higher. Like if you were in New York City or any metropolitan really high area, the labor rates go up because of usually they have to be union people, but we don't deal with that. So write that down. Federal Pacific, Zenco. Now Zenco also let's see, do we have it in here on the next slide? No, but let's see. They also marketed under Sylvania, which was there. No, it's not in my notes here, but I know that they also doesn't show it there, but just be aware of that. I have not seen a Zenco yet. We've seen plenty of Federal Pacifics, and the years that they were used, because that's important, right? I believe was from the sometime in the early 70s through the 80s. I think maybe the early 90s you might find it, but mid 90s, late 90s and on, they weren't using it anymore. I don't know when the lawsuit happened. So you want to be aware of that. You don't want to miss that. Now the roof's real important. As I said, you need to look up what type of roof is it? Is it 3 tabs, which is what this is, and which is asbestos, not asbestos, asphalt shingles? Is it tile roof? In some areas you have slate. I'm not showing that. That's real expensive. Or is it metal roofs? Or is it flat roof and rolled? You need to know that. If it's 3 tab just means that I think it'll be a better slide when I bring up the next ones to show you. because these lines right here line up almost like when you're doing tile work or subway or brickwork, where the next one is the middle, where architectural shingles, which see 310 versus architectural. I'm going to show you a photo of what that looks like for those who don't know. Metal roofs is the best. They sometimes it actually adds a lot of attractiveness to it. Just really depends on the decor, the neighborhood, because you might not put this in a neighborhood where all the houses have tile roofs. First of all, the HOA probably won't let you do it. So this is the 3-tab. This is the architectural. On the 3-tab, you can see that this line should line up all the way up the roof. If when you start to watch it, and by the time it gets up to the roof and it starts to curve over this way, well, that probably was not done by a licensed roofer, and that requires a permit and a licensed contractor, or he was drinking too much that afternoon, or he was in a rush, on Friday, whatever. You don't want to buy that house. It needs to be re-roofed. If there's problems with it, this is what we put on an architectural. Architecturals are a thicker gauge. They're heavier. The lines don't match up. It's like, no pattern to it. So it's more attractive looking than this is. They last longer. Generally, the warranty on these is anywhere from 15 to 25 years. These start at 25, they go to 50, some are lifetime. When we replace a roof that needs to be replaced, we never replace with a 3-tab. The price difference over the whole job might be $500, $1,000 maximum. Well, obviously in proportion to the size of the home, but but put your best foot forward. Remember, I said before, when you renovate, yours better be the prettiest house on the market. Well, you're not gonna have the prettiest house on the market if you go back with 3-tab, and then all the prettier homes have architectural. It's a little bit of a difference, and since we're in Florida, we have hurricanes. These will last better in the hurricane because it's heavier than these are. So we're going to talk about the drip edge, the fascia, the soffit, and show you the general condition and how to tell if they're bad. A lot of times, the granules on this will be certainly, if you see, I mentioned earlier, if you see a patch, you'll know if there's been a patch, different colors. So even if it's the same color, but they bought it 5 years later, it's going to be different. The sun changed it, different dye lots. It's not going to match 100%. So you'll know. But how else would you know when you should do it? So how can you tell when shingles are in need of replacement? Well, there's something called curling, where the corners, you see that, how they're lifting, you see that roof needs it. Now, I do not recommend that you get up on the roof. Some of you are going to do it anyway and walk around on top of the roof, and you'll be able to tell if it's spongy, because what you can't see from the ground is whether or not the wood underneath it is rotten. And if it has curls like this, you can almost guarantee that there's going to be some wood. It may be plywood, it may be boards, depends on how old the house was. That is going to be rotten, and the reason for that is that we're going to show the fascia and the soffit that there's supposed to be airflow coming from the edge of the house, rolling up underneath the roof, and then you see this dark spot right here up the top. That's called a ridge vent. So the hot air, moist air, or the cooler air is supposed to flow, come in from the bottom, run along underneath the side of this in the attic, and vent the hot, moist air at the top. If it doesn't, then what happens is it builds up heat from underneath, and that's what causes this to happen, for it curls from underneath. So there's many of them. That's the most common way that you're going to know that it needs to be that, or just colored shingles that you know that it leaked before. So that's how you tell. So this is the drip edge, and the drip edge comes brand new. Every roofer, when he puts in, is going to give you a drip edge. It's available in a few different colors. White is the most popular. It's the one that I recommend. Versus like here, it's this particular house, they did gray, but you'll see when we get into cosmetics, which actually I think the next couple of slides may show it, but they got a gray house, they got gray fascia trim, they got a gray drip edge and gray roof. It's just no contrast. It's blot. It's too monotone. It's not popping. It doesn't have that wow factor, where the white would stand out, as you'll see when I start to show you the cosmetics. But anyway, you get a new drip edge as part of the price. You don't have to pay extra for that. All new roofs include that. And then on the first couple of rows of shingles, they're going to put a membrane. They're going to put a self-adhesive membrane. So if water does get in, because usually what happens is in the cold states, the gutters fill up with snow, turns to ice, and then ice starts to build up and it comes backwards and lifts the shingles up and gets inside the house. But if they put this ice and rain membrane that actually is underneath the drip edge. So therefore that can't happen. In Florida and other places, if they have gutters, they fill up with leaves, and they don't clean them, the same thing, water rolls upwards. So that's why you have that. Okay, so here's the fascia board, which is on now. This is the gable end of the, or this is a gable. But if this was the side of the house, which it's not, and the side of the houses that are shaped like that are called gable ends versus being a hip roof, which I think I'll be able to show a photo of that. But nevertheless, we always prefer the white, and sometimes you might have to change that fascia board when it comes to the corners. I think I'll show you a picture of that. Right. Well, it would be this piece of wood here and then this piece of wood, where they come together right here, is generally we're going to see rot on the house. So you want to look, you always look for that to see if it, and that's minor. You can cut out, it's just like cutting out cancer. You can cut it out and then patch in a new piece, especially if you're painting with putty and caulking. You'll never see the seam that you put a new piece in, and it'll be covered up. Okay, so a little bit of a cutaway. Remember that before I was talking about the footers? So here's that footing, which is double the width of the foundation. So you can see, so if you wouldn't want it pushing down, and you don't want it lopsided so that the house don't fall over. Sometimes there's girders inside if it's on a crawl space. If it's on a basement, it would be usually metal columns to hold it up. If it was wood frame, this would be the wood framing right here. You have a plate, a top plate, and the studs, and then you'd have wood siding against it, or it could be concrete block. Here they just did it concrete block to bring it out of the ground because you never bring wood. You want at least 18 inches above the soil so you don't get termites and everything else. Then you got the fascia, the eaves, and then so that's just a little cutaway of the framing of the construction. So now, you can see here, look at the difference between this house and this. It's got the dark upper, right? And many different colors, but when you change the colors to it, like here, versus that one I showed you before with the grays, like here's gray, gray, right? Not much of a contrast, but here with the blue and the white, nice sharp contrast. Generally the roof should be a little darker than the body color, and then the trim. And a lot of times, sometimes you can't get trim around the windows, especially if it's a concrete block house and they didn't put any trim around it. But if you were changing the windows, we talked about that earlier, because the windows need to be changed because they're dark color, like in the lower picture here. Then put new windows in, we put in white vinyl windows, and that'll give you a little bit of that contrast. So look at here, the difference. So here, before and after, here's the same. Is that the same house? Yeah, it's the same house. And just changing the colors, how this is lively, this is drabby and dull, right? And it's that white. And now that I tell you, when you look around at houses, the same thing here. A lot of times you'll see this, a brownish color or a green color, the really old houses. It's nasty. It should look like that. Same house, just changing it. The white trim pops. Sometimes it's a little off-white, but it could be like a creamy color, but it still should have that contrast. And so here you have the contrast where the body was darker than the trim, but it should be the other way around. But here you can see darker, it's lighter than the roof color, but you can't really see it, but I know it is. And then you have the white, which really makes everything stand out and pop. So cosmetics definitely changes, and when we get into showing the before and afters. Matter of fact, on the very first, before we started, there was a before and after of a house, and just, I don't know if you noticed it, but we're going to bring that example back up again. Just changing the painting of that house made the house look like it was worth 20,000 more. Okay, does anybody need a 5-minute break? Let's see, we've been going for about an hour and a half. We are about a little bit more than halfway finished. So if you need a coffee break or a bathroom break, go ahead and do it. I don't need one. I'll stay here and answer any questions. We'll talk about anything you want, but we'll give it a few moments. Any questions in the chat, Eric?
I have
Eric,
one.
are you still there?
I have one. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Going back to the septic and sewer stuff, did you say that the home inspection won't inspect the septic?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that they won't inspect the well. They won't inspect a lot of things They'll look at the electrical panel, and if there's something obvious, they'll say that. But what they're always going to do is make a comment. We recommend getting a licensed professional, getting a licensed professional. So I think they cover themselves that way, but no, they do not do septics. But the septic system would be where you would do that flow test I was talking about. And that's about $125. It's just telling you what percentage that the fields are working at. And when they're done doing the flow test, then they're going to suck everything out. The clean out is, depending on where you live, is anywhere from 350 to 450 to suck out and clean out a septic tank. All the time, even if you don't pay for a flow test, when they suck it out, once they're done, they suck it all out. Then they either the hose from their truck or the hose from your house. They wash down all the sides, getting all the junk off of it, and then spray some more on the bottom. And they suck all that out until they can see the concrete. And then they get their flashlight and they just visually inspect the walls and the base to make sure that there's no cracks in the tank. Most of the time, the tanks are okay. It might be the fields that are not so okay. I didn't mention before, but a lot of times if you don't know where the septic is, but you see the difference on the clock with the green. You have a darker area, but a lot of times you walk on the grass and there's like a rectangle, or just an area that sometimes it's soggy. That means it's not percolating and you got bad soil and it's favoring, and the septic system disconnected in the fields. There's what we call junction boxes, and it disconnected and it's now just going to one field, and that's why it's so green there or it's wet there. So that would be a telltale sign that you need new fields. But yeah, the home inspector does not inspect that septic system. And a septic system is the unknowns. So if you didn't do that and you get caught, that can cost you $5,000 to $25,000. Because if you had to put a whole new septic system in, and then you better do your due diligence because
Add quick, click the screen one more time because the timer is not going.
oh, okay. Is it going now?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. Um,
I'm sorry, real quick. What did you say about you said the green, if it's a knot in the green, that's more than likely you'll need the field to be.
if you see a darker green small area, either in a rectangular shape or just like a square little spot, like 3 by 5 or something like that, or it could be 10 feet long by 2 feet wide or whatever, that's much greener than the rest of the grass. That means that one of the fields are not working and it's only going to that one.
Okay,
Because
got it.
there's rows of fields, right? And it comes out into a junction box, and then it's supposed to go out to each individual one. But if maybe a roots get in there and clog it, something happened where it's favoring one side, so it's not operating at full potential.
Thank you.
I don't think this timer is working. Does it
Yeah, it's going. The gray is filling in.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's how you tell. Yes, I see. Okay.
Zaja has a question. When wholesaling, do you recommend having an LLC set up prior to starting, or can I do a few while I wait for it to be created? It doesn't
Yes,
cost very much to set an LLC up, but yes, you can definitely do a couple before you get started with an LLC.
you're going to
Yeah,
want to have the LLC, and you can get started for $99. You can get a Wyoming LLC online, started for $99. That's the filing fee and the firm that'll do it for you. They have two packages, one for 99, one for 199. Eric, go ahead and put that website in the chat. It's Wyoming LLC Attorneys.
yeah.
So you do that, and the reason I'm saying that it would be nice to have that is because profit and loss. And so obviously now if you do a wholesale, that's ordinary income. Anything that you sell from January 1st through December 31st is ordinary income. You can, whatever tax bracket you're in, it may put you in a higher tax bracket. But you want to then offset that. So if we were charging for today, or you were taking any classes, you'd take out your debit card from the business LLC and pay for it. You need gas, take out your business card, start paying for the car insurance, start paying for the car payment through the business. You need copy paper, anything that is legitimately your cell phone. Start running it all through there instead of deducting a percentage of it. Write the whole darn thing off. It comes out an expense. So because like I don't know if you heard earlier, but we do a class on LLCs, and then that would be your operating one. But once you buy property, you're going to hold on to it. You're going to want a different LLC. But to start off with, it would be nice to have one so that any expenses can offset that income of the profit you'll make on that wholesale deal.
So Robert's asking what criteria are you using to decide whether to flip or rent? Well, that's mostly based on how you're going to buy the property. If you're using hard money, most of the time you're going to want to fix and flip it because the hard money is going to be a little bit more expensive. So it's not going to make sense to cash flow. But if you're buying the property on owner financing or you're buying the property on subject to, where you're buying it creatively and you're leveraging the seller, then obviously we're going to put it out on a lease option. We typically don't do any regular straight rentals. We only do lease options. We sell all of our properties on lease options. But as far as the fixing and flipping goes, um, you're basically, if you're going to fix it and flip it for the retail sale, you need to put the wow factor in. Everything needs to be top notch. Everything needs to look great. The kitchen, the master bathroom. But if you're just going to be fixing, flipping it for a rental, then it just needs to be safe and clean. It doesn't have to be completely updated. It just needs to be safe and clean.
Now, to add to what you just said, you could do hard money lending and still do a rental because that's the BRRRR method, where people buy it with use their own money, fix it up once it's done. I mentioned that earlier, where if you wanted to refinance it, you might have that 20% built in already. And the BRRRR method is a lot of the loans today that is based on the income of the property, not your income, and it's an 80-20 loan where they'll give you 80% of the appraised value. And so then you
Robert,
can do that.
Robert's asking, what's the benefits of a lease option? Number one is we pass on all the maintenance and repairs to the tenant buyer. So you're getting the still traditional tax benefits of being a landlord, but you're passing on all the maintenance and repairs onto the tenant buyer, and you're also controlling the deed. You're not giving up the deed. So if you sell on owner financing or if you sell subject to, you no longer control the deed and you no longer have the property in your name. But if you do a lease option, you still have the deed control, and now you're still getting cash flow and getting all the depreciation and appreciation of the property, but you're not having to deal with maintenance and repairs. We pass that all on to the tenant buyer.
And you don't have to worry about, if you did sell it, about foreclosing, because if you're in a mortgage state versus which is a judicial state like Florida is, there's 25 judicial states, what we call mortgage states, and there's 25 deed of trust states. You don't want to have to go through a foreclosure. So the biggest reason, the two main reasons for doing a lease option is no foreclosure, you evict. And secondly, Eric touched on it, but I'm going to phrase it differently. The money that you make on a lease option versus selling it. If you wholesaled it and you made $10,000, if you kept it as a lease option for at the end of 3 years, you would make $58,000 or more. And if you held it for a couple of years, you may make $100,000, and you may own it forever. And eventually it'll be paid off. But there's so many benefits that you give up when you sell. Like Eric mentioned, you get the depreciation, you get the appreciation, you get cash flow. You don't have any headaches. There's no maintenance and repairs. It's all handled by that. We do a class on that, which is going to be coming up in May. But yeah, major difference when I show the difference between selling it, killing the golden goose versus doing a lease with an option to buy.
And the last question, and then we'll get started. What is the longest in years we can do a lease option? Typically, we give them at least 3 years because if they need to repair their credit or get extra income or have at least 2 years of tax returns, we typically give 3 years. And then you can always extend it do an additional 3 years and collect another non-refundable option fee twice. And they would forfeit the first one, and you do another one after the second 3 years.
The only time that we'll do it more than 3 years is if it's upside down. And there's what a lot of times we buy these houses subject to either there's very little equity, they got $5,000 or $10,000 in equity, or they're equal, they're upside down. So those might not and then we want to mark that house up $30,000 or $40,000 more than we're paying for it and give them 3 years. But in 3 years it may not appreciate that much, so we may have to go 5 years. So that just depends on the equity when you're buying it.
All right, go ahead. One more. So basically, in 3 years, my income stops. Now, in 3 years, you get to sell the property and you get all your equity out of it.
You get money when you do a lease option. Let's say you found the house for $200,000 and you're going to put it back out at $240,000, and you're paying $1,000 a month. You rent it out at $1,500 a month, and you get upfront money for that $40,000 that you marked it up. It's $240,000 because you're paying two. You want at least 5% minimum
Ah,
non-refundable option fee up front. Did you say something, Eric?
No, somebody unmuted themselves
Oh,
back there.
so you're gonna get money up front, which is a non-refundable fee, maybe $12,000 on a 240 sale. You're gonna get $500 spread per month. That's $18,000 over 3 years. On the back end, you marked it up 40,000. They gave you 12 up front, so 12 from 40 is still 28. They still owe you 28,000 on the back end. But and let's say when you bought that house for 200,000, it had $150,000 first mortgage, and the seller had 50,000 equity. Well, that 150 mortgage at the end of 3 years will be down to at least 147. So you make the pay down on the mortgage. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to doing a lease option. Any other questions, Eric, or should we restart?
Go ahead and continue.
Okay. All right. So now that we've finished on the walk around the outside, it's time to go inside. Right. So we're going to walk on the inside. There's a lot of different things that we're going to look at on the inside of the house. Um, so electrical, since we looked at the outside, when we come inside on the electrical, we want to look around. You'll see, and I'll show you some photos of it. Is it a 2-wire system or is it a 3-wire system? Does it have aluminum wire, not aluminum wire? Does it have ground fault breakers in the spots that they're supposed to have? The panel box, all those different things that we want to look at to make sure that they're the right thing. So you would look at all that, and I'm gonna show you a couple more slides on that. Then you're gonna look at the AC handler inside the house. It's either gonna be in a closet. Hopefully it's in a closet or in the garage. Worst case scenario, it's up in the attic, and sometimes they'll have a pull down set of stairs. You can go up the stairs, and hopefully there's a light up there that pulls the chain. If not, come with a flashlight and see if you can see it. Don't go up into the attic. I don't recommend that. That's a liability. By the way, whoever asked that question about should I have an LLC, one of the things that you should definitely do as soon as you get the LLC, and it's very, very inexpensive, is get yourself general liability insurance to cover that. So when you're out looking at a property, and let's say you didn't take my advice and you went up into the attic and you fall through it, not only did you damage the place, but now you have general liability insurance to cover it. It just covers all different things, but that would be an expense to offset any income as well. So important to look about the electric. Plumbing, we're going to find out. I'm going to show you this type of plumbing, the pipes themselves on the water lines, not the waste lines. Although the waste lines, you can look at that too, but you really can't see too much of that. But we're going to show you what type of plumbing, if it has it, you're going to have to replumb the house. But we're going to then look underneath. I like to open up the vanities. I like to look at the hot water tank and see whether or not there's any, especially in the kitchen sink, was there mold? Was there a kitchen sink leak and the bottom thing is warped, or there's a couple of pieces of plywood in there? Usually that's typical to that. So we're going to check out the plumbing, and then we're going to look at lighting in the house. We want to make sure that is there sufficient lighting, like in the kitchen. There may only be one little light over here, and we want to put in recessed lighting all along here. You might want undercounter lighting. You want maybe have some pendant lightings hanging down over here. Maybe you're redoing the bathroom, and in the master bathroom, in the shower, you want to put a light in the shower, which is nice. So you're going to look around for the lighting that you're going to be, if you're missing, or noting which ones you're going to be changing, and writing down how many you have. When we get to scope of work, you'll see what I'm talking about. That becomes a cost, obviously, that you need to know. Doors, windows, and trim. What type of doors are they? What type of trim? Doors come flat, which are the Luan doors. When they come, there's a wood, like a birch color. Sometimes they get painted white, but they're flat. They get holes in them too easy. The molding, there's different types of molding. One's called a clamshell. It's just smooth. It looks like if you took a clamshell, stick it at one end and tapers down. So that's what the molding looks like, and that's why it's called clamshell. Is it the base molding? Is it only 2.5 inches? We like to go back with 5 3/4 or 6 inch, especially if it has, if there's vinyl plank flooring or engineered flooring floating that was added. You'll know it was added because they put a little piece of 1/4 inch, a 3/4 of an inch quarter round. They call it shoe molding in front of the base molding. And the reason for that is when you put flooring down, other than carpeting, every other type of flooring, ceramic tile, vinyl plank flooring, engineered flooring, all of it does not go directly to the wall. It stays a 1/4 inch off the wall because of expansion. What covers that 1/4 inch gap is your molding. So those who, when they come in, they've owned the house, they generally don't want to pull the molding off. They should, but they don't know better, or the people that are selling them the flooring don't tell them that. So now they add that 3/4 base molding, and it makes the 2.5 look even smaller. So we rip it out. The labor to put the 3/4 base molding in is the same to reinstall the 6 inch but the only difference is the cost of the material. But you're going to get that wow factor, and it's going to look much better. It's going to be a cleaner job. So we definitely do that. You want to look around what type of windows. Do the windows, are they Jalis windows? You know, the crank outs, do they operate? Do they work? If they're the metal ones that go up, and as soon as you pull it up, it falls right back down on you. That's just the balances, which are the weights and springs that can be refurbished. Just a little pop out thing, so you can refurbish the windows. Are they cracked? You know, you're going to observe all that stuff. So, because most important thing you're going to do once you do all this observation is you got to come up with a scope of work and what it's going to cost you. So you want to look at all those different things, whether you're changing the trim, whether you're changing the doors, are you changing the whole door, or you're just changing what we call the slab because the trim looks good, the jambs, which is the in between of the wall part of the door frame, everything's good. Well, maybe you just change the slab versus the molding is bad, the door is bad. Then you're gonna get what's called pre-hung doors, where it comes the door already hung and the jam and everything, and just install it. So, or I can't give you every little detail today, but these are the things we look at. Those that are local that want to come next week on the fourth Saturday, we actually are going to meet at 10 o'clock, not 10:30, at a home in the Orlando market that needs renovating. And then it's a lot easier for me to point these things out, but we kind of do like in the beginning, do a little bit of a treasure on. Go look and see if you find any things I'm teaching you today, especially like the plumbing, the electric, is the bad things. And then we discuss all other things, but certainly you want to look for the major things that I taught you today. And then we can explain it better than me just verbally telling you. I can't show you everything. Going back, kitchen. So almost all the time we're going to be redoing the kitchen, the upper wall cabinets. If there's a 1 foot of drywall above them, it's called a soffit. Most of the time we'll rip that out and either go back with the same kitchen cabinets. The uppers come in 30 inches tall from the bottom of it to the top of the cabinet is 30 inches. And then that space above it is 1 foot. So if you took that out and it was a small kitchen, there was no place to add more cabinetry, like in the diagram that's here, there's very little cabinetry there. By the time you have your refrigerator, your stove, and your dishwasher, there isn't a hell of a lot of base cabinets or wall cabinets. So maybe then you go to 42-inch uppers and you ripped out that 12-inch soffit. So now you can go with a tall. Yes, somebody's got to get into a step stool, but still you can put away the the things you don't use that often in the higher ones. Or you can leave it open and now you can have crown molding above it. It just makes it more airy looking. By the way, we do the same thing in the showers and the bathtubs. If there's a soffit above those, we rip it out and then ring the tiling on the wall all the way up to the ceiling. It'll take a small 3x3 or a 4x4 shower, and then we put the clear glass doors on it and run the tile all the way up the top. It makes it bigger feeling and it gives it a nice attractive look. So we're always going to replace the kitchen cabinets most of the time, countertops. We'll get into that. You can figure a minimum of $10,000 to redo a kitchen. And why do I come up with that number? 2,000 for appliances, 2,000 for granite countertops, and 6,000 labor and material for the cabinets themselves. But that's for a small layout. You can spend $6,000 on the materials. So it's just in proportion, obviously, but minimum of 10,000. Your granite could be 3,000. Your appliance package should be anywhere from 1,800 to 2,500. Best time to buy appliances is when there's holidays. All holidays. The best ones is usually like Memorial Day, Labor Day, President's Day. Those would have the really good sales. And you can put them on layaway. You can put them on layaway, or like if you buy them at Home Depot, or we get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy. You shop around and see who's got the best sales that time, and basically can get the same brands everywhere. And we always go back with the stainless steel. We don't use black. If you're doing rental, buy black. Stainless steel, they won't keep clean. White shows too much dirt. Black is the easiest for tenants. Bathrooms, same thing. We're going to be renovating them. We're going to change out the vanities, put new toilet in. We usually redo the toilet, the new toilet, and we do the new tile in the bathtub and the shower. Sometimes not. Sometimes if it's, let's say, a 3-bedroom house, and we're definitely going to do the 2 most important rooms in the house. The first and most important room that sells the house is what? Anybody shout it out?
Kitchen.
Kitchen, 100%. Kitchens is what sells the house. Do not skimp in the kitchen. Put the crown molding on. Put the undercounter lighting in. You know, put the granite in, you put your best foot forward, make it the most beautiful, gorgeous, drop dead kitchen in that block, because that's what sells it. What's the second most important room?
Is
Anyone?
it the master bed and bath?
Yes, but more so the bathroom itself. But yes, the bedroom is important too, but more so the bathroom. So that's where we stick our money, in those three spots. You know, and don't skimp in those areas. Obviously, it's within the budget, but you know, like it's silly to save $500 to not put tile and undercounter lighting underneath the backsplash. Small job, you can get it done for that. You know, 3 inch by 6 inch subway tile, white, inexpensive, but it's naked looking if you do without the backsplash. It's just not finished, and that's you don't want to skip in the kitchen. Soffits above the kitchen cabinets or bathtubs. We talked about that already, about removing them. Flooring. The most popular flooring today is vinyl plank luxury flooring. It can look like wood. It can have that same coloring that here. It's like that elm gray look, which is the most popular today. Actually, on yours, it looks brownish, beige, and it comes in all different colors. On my screen, excuse me, it looks gray. Because I'm looking at two different screens here. I have a screen with notes on it, and then this is the screen you guys see. My screen looks a little different. But anyway, we'll generally come in and put throughout all the common areas one piece of material, which is usually the vinyl plank flooring. In the bathrooms, I like to go with ceramic tile. The vinyl plank flooring, it will go in the kitchen area. You put the kitchen cabinets in first. Do not put the flooring in first and put the cabinets on top of it, for the same reason that I told you that the flooring doesn't go directly to the wall, because it'll expand and then it'll buckle up on you. So if you hire a contractor and the contractor tells you he wants to put the first thing he wants to do is put the flooring down, say nope, and you should be asking that question to your contractor that you select. That will be in your interviewing of your contractors, which do you do first? And unfortunately, too many of them are going to tell you to do the flooring first. The flooring should be the last thing, for two reasons. One, it'll void the warranty, and it usually says that right on the box. Do not put cabinets on top of this, for the same reason that you don't bring it all the way to the wall, because there's no room for expansion. So now it can't expand because you've put the cabinets on top of it, can't expand. And then let's say there's a piece that it's running perpendicular to the cabinets and it runs all the way underneath it. Which do you think is going to be replaced in the future, 10 years from now, whatever? The cabinets or the flooring? Anybody? Which would go first for a homeowner to replace?
The cabinets.
No, the flooring.
Really?
Yeah, the flooring will wear out before the cabinets, or out of style. You know, if you put a nice cabinets in, they're going to last a lot longer than the flooring. So the point is that if they have to change the flooring out, these are floating floors. They're not glued, but if the pieces are stuck underneath the cabinetry, you're gonna have to cut it, and it's just not gonna be good. Whereas if you put it in afterwards, and it goes to it, you take off the base moldings and you start at the wall and you just pull it up until you get to, let's say, where there's a damaged spot in the middle, and you change the damaged spot and you put all the pieces back again. So we can't have it being secured tightly where it can't expand. Also, the other reason why you do it last is the dust. Oh my God, I don't care, even if you cover them up with paper and tape the seams, the amount of dust at the end is going to be a nightmare of how many times you have to mop that floor to get rid of the dust. So flooring, especially if it's carpeting, the only flooring that'll go down before we're done with the house is ceramic tiling, because that's a dusty, messy job in itself, especially if they're doing the cutting in the house or even in the garage. You're going to get dust all over the place. So that's okay to do that first, because I'll put cabinets on top of ceramic tile, but we're still not going to bring it all the way to the wall, but that's okay to put the cabinets on top of it. So that's what we do. And sometimes you have to level the floor. A lot of times you'll come in and you come in the front door, and we're going to show that when I get to some of the houses, and there's ceramic tile, but to the right and to the left is carpeting. And yet I want to put the vinyl plank flooring, and you can float the vinyl plank flooring right on top of the ceramic tile. You don't have to pop that tile up. If you pop the tile up, it's about $1 a square foot to pop it up to $1.50. So, and that includes hauling it away. So it's expensive. And then when they do that, sometimes they got to use a jackhammer, and it makes little divots and ruts. And now you got to patch the floor before you can do anything. So we don't do that. We float it right over. But when you pull up the carpeting, that carpeting is going to be lower than where the tile is. So you got to fill that in. So you either buy what they call floor level, or it comes and you mix it up, or 5-gallon buckets of it, and you pour it. It's like a very soupy, and then water, just like water seeks its own level. If I'm holding my cup and there's water in here, I can't have it higher at one end. It forms the same level no matter what the shape it is, right? So that's what this material does. You don't have to level it. You just pour it, and it'll level out perfectly. You either do that or you fill in that spot with either tile or concrete board, which you put behind the tile when you're doing a new home, when you're doing new tile work. Either way, it's got to be filled in. And I'll talk about that again when I show you that a couple of those scenarios of homes that we did that way. Ceilings. The question we get a lot is, if it's popcorn ceilings, should we take the popcorn down? Well, if it's really damaged and it had a lot of leaks because the roof was leaking and there's stains all over the place and some of it fell off already and there's been patches, yeah, I'm gonna pull it all off. You can figure $1.50 tops to remove it, and then go back with what they call a knockdown, which is a form of a texture, which is what we spray on with joint compound, the same thing you tape the walls with, only it goes into a machine. It's called a hopper, and just like a spray gun that you paint with, it sprays the walls or the ceilings with the texturing. So we would do that. If my budget allows it, we'll do it. If the budget doesn't, and the drop ceilings, I mean the popcorn ceiling's in good shape, Eric and I would like to tell you about any decision on something is, if I leave this, is it going to stop me from selling the house? The answer is no. People don't come in the house and do this, right? And as I'm doing it now, I'm looking up in the house I'm in, it's got popcorn ceiling. No big deal. I'll ever do that. It will not stop the house from being sold. What might stop the house from being sold is 8-foot ceilings. If you have tall people like me, I'm 6'2", I've very shrunk an inch, used to be 6'3". I used to be 6'4". I've lost almost 2 inches, but that's from back operations and disc. But we don't then, when we have 8-foot ceilings, we don't put ceiling fans up because they're going to hang down. Even if you put a ceiling hugger, it's going to red flag and it's going to point out to a tall person. Oh, now if you staged it and you have one above the bed, they won't feel it. But if they're walking underneath it, they will, right? So you want to make sure that you don't do that. We put ceiling lights on. Then as far as, let's see, what else with the ceilings? That would be about it. Drop ceilings, yes. In the kitchens, a lot of times there's a recess or the whole ceiling's been dropped down, and then there's a fluorescent covering. That's the old, built in the 70s, and they're fluorescent line. We rip that out and bring it all back up to the same height. So that we do that in the kitchen sometimes. Sometimes it extends into the dining room. We want tall ceilings, especially it just gives more volume to a house. The walls, same thing. If the walls have paneling, we're going to take that down. Depending on the texture of it, when we texture the walls, we use what's called a orange peel. Orange peel is a very small texture. If you get close to the wall, it looks like it's got teeny little bumps on it, similar to the skin of an orange, which isn't perfectly smooth. But you could also use knockdown on the walls, and that hides a lot of imperfections. Something you need to really watch out for is additions, like a room that's been added on, especially if it used to be a sunroom. And so one of the things you have to, an advertisement for the house says it's 2,000 square feet. And then you go to the property appraiser's office, which is something you should do. And the property appraiser's office says it's 1,750 square feet. Well, where'd that extra 150 square feet come from? They finished off that room without a permit. That will hurt you. You have to take that into consideration, because you're going to have to get that legalized. Worst case scenario is you have to take it apart. Usually you don't have to. Usually if it's closed in, they'll make you pull a permit, and you got to get a contractor that's licensed, and then they'll want a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician to sign off on it that it was installed to code. Very rarely will they make you open up a wall to see something. They'll let a licensed contractor or a licensed architect or engineer come out there and certify to the city that it was built properly. I said we would talk about the outlet. So if you come in and you see a 2-prong outlet, that's a problem versus it being a 3-prong, because there's no ground in this house. So now if you have if you have an appliance that's got this little round thing, you have to break it off and put it in. So generally you'll be told that you got to rewire the house. That's expensive. We had a situation on a 1,000 square foot home on a crawl space and a very low ceiling, attic, it was almost a flat ceiling. It was a little bit, would have been a nightmare for somebody to crawl around up there or crawl underneath the house because they were both so low. We eventually found a solution, and the solution was to change every one of the panel box, the circuit breakers, and put in a ground fault. The next slide that I'm going to show you, let me show you right here. This is a ground fault breaker, right? And which is supposed to be next to each, within 2 feet of a sink. It's got to be near bathrooms. It's got to be one in the garage. It's got to be one outside. And this is the set and the testing. You know, if you reset it, if it tripped, and once you fix the problem, you reset you push the black button in, and it resets it. But if you don't see any of these, that doesn't mean the house doesn't have one. You gotta then go look in the panel box and see if there's one for the kitchen, one for the bathroom, or it could be one, and they daisy chains it. In other words, they draw the power from panel box to the kitchen into one outlet, and then from that outlet feeds all the other outlets and feeds the bathroom. They're all on the same, that's okay. So what we were told is if we changed every outlet in the house that was two panel like this here, I mean, two prong, and make it, and put one of these, we put a circuit breaker, the panel box inside the circuit breaker, make the breakers itself a ground fault. Now every outlet in the house is ground faulted because you don't need a ground for this to work. For these GFCI outlets to work, they don't need one. So, but we still then would change the plugs to this for two reasons. One, they're probably old and nasty looking, and two, then they don't have to break off the prong and ruin their warranty on the appliance. It's not grounding, it doesn't make a difference because you're protected anyway. But you would then change them so they don't have to plug it off. That's what you do there. I mentioned that the plumbing, that there's certain plumbing that you have to really watch out for, and that's the polybutylene plumbing. It'll have that serial number on it right here. I blow that up for you, as you can see. So if you want to write that down, if you see that, and it's a bluish grayish, this picture here is more blue, this picture is more gray. It's kind of in between, closer more towards the gray, and it has these brass bands around them. If you miss this, that's a major problem. There's no way in the world that your buyer is going to buy that house with that polybutylene plumbing in there, because their home inspector is going to tell them about that and warn them that they won't get coverage if they have a leak. The insurance company won't pay for it. So it's got to be replaced. When you replace these, especially if it's a slab, then they have to go up they bring the water in and they go up into the attic and drop down to come to everything. Well, let's say you have two back-to-back bathtubs or showers. That happens a lot. And you've replaced the tile on both of them, and you miss this. Now, once you have the buyer brings their home inspector in, you say, okay, I'll fix it. You have to decide which one of those two showers you're going to destroy the tile so you can get to the back of each shower body to change it. So you don't want to miss that. And that's another reason that I look underneath the vanities. You can find it by the washing machine. You can find it at the hot water tank. Well, the hot water tank, some of the types going out are copper or they've been changed, but where it goes inside the wall, you might see that sticking out. On a toilet, you can see the little piece sticking out of the wall. So those are the areas that you might be able to ascertain if it has the polybutylene. If it has the polybutylene, it's going to cost you, let's say on a 2,000 square foot home, it's going to cost you $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000. 10 years ago, it was $3,800, and that was on the high side. But like everything, it's gone up, so you don't want to miss that. So if you've gone through the house,
I got a question. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
For that PV, what year are we talking about? I mean, what year construction of the house built should we be more concerned about that being a possibility?
It may have been late 70s, but definitely during the 80s into the early 90s, and maybe mid 98. We own a house that we're about to renovate, and I believe that was built in 96, and that's got it has it. And that might have been around the last year that they used it. It was in the mid 90s. You won't say if any house was built in 2000, you won't see it. So for the last 25 years, it hasn't been used.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so at this point, you've walked around the outside, taking notes, taking pictures right from the outside of certain things. You've walked around the inside. And as you're walking around and saying, yeah, I would probably do that, I'd probably do this. I don't like this wall here. The kitchen's closed in. You're formulating ideas. Then I want you to go back into each room, and I want you to stand in opposite corners. I want you to come to, I want you to go to this corner here and shoot this way. The camera will shoot right down this side here, and then it'll go out at an angle like this here, but you won't see this triangle. Then go to this corner and shoot back and let the angle show this wall and let it come out at an angle this way, and you won't see this part, but you saw that last time. And sometimes you need 3 pictures in the room. Sometimes you need individual pictures of something, an item in the room that you're going to highlight and need it done. And you want to remember, take a picture of a cabinet you want off the wall, you want a built-in, you want, or that hole in the ceiling, or whatever it may be. Take an individual picture. When you've done taking enough photographs throughout the whole house, I want you to start outside the house, right, and approach the house and do a video. We're at 1721 Oak Street, doing a pre-visit, and then, show the outside of the house. Needs a roof. I need that removed. It's got a skylight. If you put your finger in the field, you can touch that skylight up on the roof, and you could be 100 feet away from it. It'll look like your finger's right on it. Same thing inside the house. You point to a ceiling fixture, anything. So you're talking, right? Your wish list that you're going to give this to a contractor and pointing to certain things. Always point and talk about what you want done from the outside. Then you walk inside and do the same thing. And you walk around the whole room, say, I want this wall removed. I want all the base molding removed. We're going to this room, we're going to do this, we're going to do this here. So between the still photos and the video and some notes that you've taken, when you get back home, you can then do a scope of work, right? So once you do all of that, then you've come up with a plan of what you want to do. And then perhaps you've also had the house do a home inspection. Now you're ready to do a scope of work. And obviously the scope of work that you want to get bids on will definitely include all the things that you built, that your home inspector found. Wouldn't it be nice that when you, in addition to the things that you want done, but when your end buyer gets the home inspection, wouldn't that be nice that they tell your buyer, hey, I don't know who renovated this house, but boy, they did a nice job. I always find a bunch of stuff. I couldn't find anything, or I found this and I'm really just nitpicking. It's really minor, but you got a nice house. Somebody say something? Just mute yourselves, everybody, please, if you're not talking. So you're gonna want to do that. Now, once you have all your price, I mean, what the home repair inspection, now it's time to do a scope of work. The best way and the easiest way for you to get pricing is to do labor only pricing. So you want to get bids from contractors, and you're going to use, I thought for some reason it's coming up later on, but that's okay. You're going to get a detailed proposal from the contractor, and it's going to be labor only. We're going to show you that, but it's not coming up for some reason. We're going to come back to that. The next slide is going to show something different. But labor only because it's so much easier. And then, like, for example, one I like to say is, how much do you get to install base molding? That's linear footage. In other words, is it 10-foot wall? It's not square footage, right? Square footage would be painting, tiling, flooring, roofing is done by squares. Square is a 10 by 10 area or 100 square feet. So when you get a quote on a roof, it might say you have 19 square. That's not, it's just telling you they price it that way. There's a few items that you will get labor and material on, but most of it's going to be labor only. It makes it easier when I get to the scope of work for you to compare one contractor to another. It would be very difficult if it was labor and material because you don't know which one they're doing and what specs they're using. So not the way to go. It also makes it easier on the contractor to not have to, I got to really pad this, because the last thing I want to do is get caught short. And, they don't want to underbid, because if they underbid towards halfway through the deal, they start not showing up at your house anymore because they realize what they have left is not enough money left. And I'm going to show you. And by doing labor only and the scope of work I'm going to show you, you're never going to overpay. You're never going to let that contractor get ahead of you that you've paid for something that wasn't done yet, and then he quits, and now you got to pay another contractor to do something you already paid for. That's not good. That happens a lot, especially when a contractor says, give me a third, and a third. I want a third up front, third when I'm halfway done, and a third when I tell you that we're done, not when you get a home inspector, which is terrible. It should be after a home inspection if it needs, not a home inspection, but a building permit inspection, because if the building inspector doesn't pass something, because the contractors like to put in there, of course, we'll fix whatever they say. No. You're not getting paid until it's done. You don't want to chase somebody. So, anyway, let's move on, then we'll come back to that. So before and after pictures. This is the one that when we had on the screen before you started, all we did was trim these bushes here. There was no new planting done at this house other than the mulch. We just had all the trees just trimmed so you could see these windows here. This tree here is blocking. You don't even see the window over there. But more importantly is the paint color. Now, I did take two different angles, but still there was blah over here. There was no contrast. And whenever a garage door faces front versus a side mounted garage, paint it the same color as the body of the house. It makes the house look bigger. You can't really tell from this, but it cycle. And then it gives you an idea, an option that if you do have a trim around the door, that you can get that white trim and that pop. But look at the difference here. So here we have a darker color than the body of the roof, right? And then this wasn't a white, it was an off-white. It's actually brighter than that, but again, it's a little bit of a overcast day that I guess I took the picture on. But just changing the outside color made this house look like it was worth $20,000 more. This is the house that when you walk in was ceramic tile, and this was the dining room, this was the living room, and that had carpeting, and we had to deal with that because we put in this house we did engineered cherry hardwood flooring in here. Whoops, went too fast. So this is the kitchen in that house, before and after of it. This is a different house, but this and this is the same house. These wall cabinets right here were taken down. They were here because we wanted to make an opening into the family room, which I'll show you in a moment. And then over here we had, where was it? Oh, no, over here. Here we had a wine rack and a desk. Wine racks are okay, but the desks are obsolete. But by taking those two cabinets out, I was worried that I'm losing space. So we took those two cabinets out and we mounted them over here and made a pantry out of them. See those two right there? Let me blow it up. See, so I'm sorry, wrong picture. Okay, it'll come up in another photograph. That's not it, because the pantry's over here on this side, wrong side of the picture. Okay, so anyway, in this particular house, the cabinets were okay. We ripped off the countertops and came back in with granite. We put in the engineered flooring throughout, and even in the kitchen. I did it because it has that nice look, even though it's not waterproof. Then this is a different home. This is the same house as this one. This is just the finished picture showing the pass-through. When we opened up the wall here, we were going to take it all the way down, but you can see then we close that back up and you see this picture here because there was a pipe and some wiring. And I could have taken that down. It was a vent for the ceiling, for the sink, but the ceiling in this house was in perfect condition. And if I had taken this down, then there would have been a spot on the ceiling we have to deal with. I said, you know what? Cover it back up and it'll still give that openness feeling, which is here, and it works. So in the kitchen, and then you'll see, I'll show you a picture on the other side of this with the opening on a different slide. Okay, so this is the opening on the other side right there. So what was there was these cabinets, these built-ins was right here. This fireplace is a double face. This is when you come into the house. This is a before picture. This is an after. That's that ceramic tile I was talking about when you came in. And then over here there was carpet, and over here there was carpet, but you're not seeing it. And then what we did was we put in here there was really nothing, just old nasty ceramic tile, right? And nothing up here. And then what we did is we I guess I gotta unblow it up. Oops, go back one. And oops. And show you this picture here. Oh, doing the wrong thing again. Oh my God, my mouse is just being tricky on me. Okay, so when we went back, oh, it's not let me blow, but we would put travertine and marble, like a stone in there, which made it much more attractive. Okay, let's move on. And so this here is the bathroom in that house. This is the before, and this is the same as the before. No, this is the after, I'm sorry. This is, they had little 4-inch tiles and checkerboard look. And here we redid it. And this, we used a decorator on this one. And she went to a company called Floor and Decor, and she mixed and matched And here you have big tile. On the floor, you got little squares in the corners, and then you got like the sheet in the middle, and then she did a subway on the back side, but it's all in the same family, and then put in the glass things here. This is the before over here. It had a frame glass. When we done, we put in a frameless glass. We painted the vanity, put in some a new countertop, and then I believe, did we put new tile? Yeah, we put new tile on the floor in there as well, because you can see it's staggered here. And when you put flooring down, if you look at this one here, it's even. Here they're staggered, which is gives it more of an attractive look versus being on an angle, on a diagonal. Then you have more waste when you do it that way versus square. But this way, you just offset it, and you save money, and it just gives you that better look. All right, moving on. Some more bathroom pictures. This is a different home. This particular house here, look at this here. That's how they built it. I don't know when this was a drop-in tub, if this step was there to build it, but it was a very small, tiny little shower. It was a coffin. It was like a 3x3, and the soffit came down over it. It was very low. Outside it, the toilet and this window. Well, what we ended up doing was moving the toilet this way and expanding the shower into where the toilet was and making it a 6-foot shower, which is now, whoops, I keep thinking it's going to blow up without me touching it, which is this. So this is what we turn this shower into this, and you can see the windows inside of it now. And here it's inside the shower, and you can see that the toilet is no longer underneath the window because we moved it into what used to be a closet. This is the vanity that we changed. When we do the vanities, one of the things that I recommend you do is that you use an 8-inch spread. That means that from the center of the hot water faucet to the center of the cold water faucet is 8 inches. And the valve itself, the decking is underneath, so it's much easier to keep clean versus the old-fashioned ones, which are deck mounted. Like, let's blow that up. I gotta go back one. And blow it up. See the deck mounted ones, they just don't look as attractive. That's not a great picture, but they get cruddy and it's hard to keep it clean, especially that's a one handle a little easier. But if it was 2 handles, it's hard to clean it around inside there. And obviously above counter sinks, nobody wants those anymore. Nobody wants laminate, so we went with a different material in there. We used a custom made cultured marble is what we used over here. Okay, this is before and after that same house that had the tub area, the shower problem. And here we just cut the trees. When you cut trees, this one here, the canopy of the trees was hanging down so low you couldn't see the house. Here we cleaned it up. Backyard. In the front, we did put sod, and because it was a very small front yard, and threw some mulch. The rear yard, we just cleaned it up, threw some sod and hay down and seeded it. This here, Eric found that it was underneath all this junk over here, and so we just left that for the backyard. If I couldn't afford to do even that, I wouldn't. It wouldn't stop the house from being sold. If there was a bad fence, and there was a fence in the back there, we didn't change the fence. They could always do that. If I didn't put ceiling fans in, is that going to stop the house from being sold? No, because they can say, "Hey, honey, don't worry, I can always put ceiling fans in." So the decision to do something or not to do something is: will this stop me from selling the house, or will this help me sell the house? That's how we make those decisions on certain things. And obviously, will the budget allow it? We're getting close to the end. Okay, this is a forced appreciation one I was telling you about. That when we started out before, it looked like this here. It had a carport. The front door was recessed. Let me blow up. So you can see it was recessed. The carport was recessed. When we framed it, we pulled the front door out and gained room there, pulled that wall out. There still was an unpermitted bedroom behind us, but it was very small. And of course, there was a step down because it was a carport. We leveled it all out and made it bigger. So we turned this house. Let me go back now and get out of this. By forced appreciation, we converted it from a 2-1 to a 3-2. We converted it from 720 square feet to 1,368 square feet. And this was the floor plan. This whole area of the house was not livable space, but because it was there to start with, we didn't have to build the roof. We didn't have to build the walls. So all we had to do was do the interior that turned it into a nice bedroom and a beautiful bathroom and the back laundry area So it was forced appreciation. It worked out really well for us. I blow this up. So you can see now where this entrance into this room used to be a step down, but we poured the concrete in here because we chopped all the floors up in here. There may be a slide showing you, but we put a big master bathroom in here. You used to could not get in there. There was a concrete wall that went across here. Anyway, we didn't have to build the expensive part of building an addition. All we had to do was legalize this, and we pulled permits. This house here, we replumbed it, waste lines, water lines, new electric. We stripped this house down to the bare concrete walls, and so I reframed it, totally redid this house because it had termite damage. So this was the outside. This was the inside, showing how it was taking up that room. You know, this window right here is that window right here, right? You can see outside, and then when you would come in, you wouldn't see over here. So we did away with that, and you'll see in the next photo what it looks like when it's finished. So here, you can see is the front door, and that front door would have been like right about here, and there was a wall here with a window. You couldn't see this, so it just opened it all up. So that gave us square footage. It was like 6 by 6 or something. That's another 36 square feet. And then the laundry room, and then the kitchen. This was really a beautiful kitchen that we put in this one. We let's see if I go to. Nope. Okay. So this is the before of the kitchens that was there. There was no sliding glass door there, but we found there used to be one. And you can see in this picture here, you can see the part of it. In this house here, the cabinets were right up to the ceiling. When we did it, we dropped them down a little bit so that we can put crown molding. Let me blow that up so you can see the crown molding. So you can see the crown molding that we put at the top. That's always another, remember the little extras to do for a kitchen, right? The backsplash. This backsplash, we went real expensive. It's the first time we ever did it. But we actually did the granite, the same thing. If you're putting granite, don't use a very busy backsplash. If you're using white cabinets, this has a form of gray, then go with a white subway tile. If I had not spent the money, Eric and I, on the granite, we would have done a white subway tile. The backsplash should not be better looking or more busy than the granite. You're taking away from the granite. Let the granite be the beauty. I read a decorated magazine in a granite store one day, and they called it the diva. Don't take away from it. So, but if you're doing the same, that's okay. The undercounter lighting, it lights it up. I mean, if we go back to the picture before. Wait a minute. Oh, going the wrong way for the kitchen. Here, look, empty. Even though this older, but it's just no lighting. It's just dull when it doesn't have to cut the tile and everything. Please don't do a kitchen without backsplash and undercounter lighting. And of course, nobody uses these range hoods anymore. That's where we put the microwave. Okay, so that's for that. Buying decisions. If most of the houses in that neighborhood have a garage and your house doesn't, be leery whether you buy it or not. Same thing for carports. But on the other hand, if the carports some have been closed in, like that particular development, it was about a third of them were closed in. So it was very normal. If it's on a busy road, I mean, you know, that you got to back out, you can't back into the property, so you have to back out. Yet, you know, we all drive them and there's people living there. There's a buyer for everything, but it's a smaller market. So be leery unless it's like a hot area, you know, like close to a downtown or something that people don't mind, then that's a different story. Proximity to commercial or industrial, you don't know. Like if there's one in the backyard and that's zoned commercial or industrial, you have no idea what they're going to build back there. So be careful. Proximity to your home or office. The reason we say that is we made the mistake of traveling 3.5 hours to get to a fix and flip. You know, that's there, and the 3.5 back. You spend a couple hours there, then you turn around, and about 20 minutes later, or a half hour, or an hour later, your contractor calls you. Oh, I really need you. I forgot to show you this, and you got to turn around and go back. So we like to say 45 minutes to an hour maximum is what we'll do. You do what you want, but that's what we recommend. As far as how far, and I definitely recommend, as I already told you, that you guys should get a home inspection. We still get home inspections many times because we're not crawling in crawl spaces, and I'm not crawling in attics. So the things to watch out for that's going to cost you is we warned you about the poly pipe, the Federal Pacific. You need to know that. Sinkholes for sure. Sinking foundations, you want to know that. Wood rot, you're gonna look if there's any wood siding at the bottom of the siding, just like 10, 15, 20 inches above the dirt. That's where you're gonna see wood rot. I told you up at the soffits where the gutters go, where they come to the corners, that's where you're gonna see wood rot. You're looking for termites. I'd have to teach you in person to show you what termites look like, and how you can tell if they're there. Aging condition of the AC, that was one of the first things we talked about. The electrical outlets and switches, these are things, driveway condition. If it's got a bunch of cracks, no big deal. I've never fixed them. I have replaced driveways, put new driveways in. That last house that we showed you, we did the forced appreciation. That had no driveway for 40 some odd years. It was a dirt driveway. We put a very expensive driveway in there. Since I took away their garage, I put a 60, I keep saying Eric and I put a 16-foot wide by 55-foot long double wide, so they could put four cars in that driveway. So we spent extra money on that, but it made up for that. So these are things, obviously, on permit. These are things you want to watch out for. We already spoke about all of that. And then the scope of work, which is, show me the money, right? Which is how you're going to get the best deal that you're going to do. So this is the scope of work part of it that I was telling you about. So you have general items, and then of course it would be price per square foot. If I unblow it up, it'll say that over there. So like plank vinyl flooring, right? No, if I'm doing it all areas, then it's general. If I'm doing the base molding, all so it can be general. But then I actually go, these are all general. I don't have on this one, the screen to show you. Then I'll go room by room. I'll have kitchen, master bath, living room, there may be different things I want done in that. I like to do this. You don't have to do it. Eric doesn't do it this way. He'd rather do individual, like he'd have a painting estimate. He'd have a electrical outlet estimate. I do them all, and then I color coordinate them. So everything that's electric, I make red. I do painting in green. All the general things that your handyman, general contractor is going to do himself would be in black. And then, which I don't have on here, a purple would be outside vendors. Remember I mentioned there's certain things that are going to be labor and material. For example, roofing. Roof's going to be labor and material. So that would be a purple color. The granite, you're not going to find a contractor who has a fabrication shop who does renovations. So that's a separate contractor. Glass doors to showers, unless you're buying it at Home Depot, which I don't recommend. And then that would be labor and material. But we just have a glass guy that does it. So there's certain things. Your AC going to be labor and material. So those are all going to be both. But for the most part, it should be labor only. And so now I'm going to take it unblown up. You can see some of it's linear, right? And then per item, like, okay, remove telephone jacks, or if it was, let's see, change out electrical outlets, or if you were hanging a ceiling fan, how much do you get to hang a ceiling fan? How much do you get for smoke detectors? How much do you get to replace a door casing around it? So every individual thing. So now when you do this and you got 4 or 5 people that give you their bids, first of all, it makes it easier on them to do an estimate, right? And where they'll make a day's labor on things that it's just a labor charge, but on the things that they charge by the square footage or the linear footage, they make profit on that. Like the squaring, the flooring, for example, putting down engineered vinyl flooring or a floating floor is $1 to about $1.50 a square foot. Labor is the going rate. So if they can get that done in 2 days versus stretching it out for the week, they make profit. If they stretch it out for a week, they just made days labor. So they still can make profit on these deals. Time is money. But now the interesting thing is you can look through them, and you're going to get a feel when you're interviewing the contractors who shows up in them. Although they can have a ratty truck with good tools, but still that might tell you something. But how they speak, they don't call it a thingamajig. You can tell they have industry language. They seem respectful. They seem to know what they're talking about. A little bit more reliable. And then, of course, you want to get referrals, and it would be nice to go look at a present job that they're working on. If they don't have any jobs that they're working on, that's a red sign too. And especially if they can start tomorrow, unless they can prove that they just finished up a big job. You happen to be lucky. We just finished, and we had a contract. Usually they have something that was supposed to schedule, but that got delayed, whatever. So we actually have an opening that we can fit yours in. That's an acceptable excuse. So now there's certain things that makes you like a particular contractor, but he's high in 3 or 4 items, and you know he's high because you've got 2 or 3 other contractors, and they're all within the same price range. They all told you $1.50 a square foot to install that vinyl. He's at $2. He's high. Painting, same thing. So basically you're getting a benchmark by getting 3 or 4 estimates, and they all come in the same price on the labor. Then now you know that's the going rate for the labor. So if somebody else is higher, it's a great negotiation tool. This also then becomes, once you pick the contractor, this you should really like, that becomes an addendum to your contract. So you definitely want to have a contract. You want to have a penalty and a reward in there. You remember we were talking about a per diem or what your holding costs are. So if I'm speaking with Jim and I show him the house, either I brought him there or he had the video and the still pictures and my scope of work and the home inspector's report. He's got everything he needs to come up with pricing. And I know I forgot the point I was just going to make. So Jim gives me so now you pick Jim. So now you make that a part of the contract, his bid, and then you put in there. I say, Jim, how long do you think it's going to take you to do this? And Jim tells me, I definitely do this, probably 3, but you know what? Let's call it 4 weeks just for unknowns. I definitely 4 weeks I can get this done. So 5 weeks for sure. No way it would take me 5 weeks. Okay, I remember what you just said. So I'm going to put a penalty in there, and my holding cost is $175 a day, $250 a day, whatever it is. And you can come up with that. If you borrowed money, then you have a monthly interest, divide that by 30 days or 31 days. You now have a per diem or per day, what it's costing you for the cost of that money. Same thing on the taxes. You have the yearly taxes divided by 365. You have insurance divided by 365. You've got electric. So whatever it is that you're paying, right, you could come up with a number that it costs you for every day that job is open, that it's costing you. That should be the penalty. So for every day that you don't finish it after 5 weeks, that's your penalty. But for every day you finish it prior to 5 weeks, I'll give you a bonus of the same amount. It's saving you money. You would spend it one way or the other. Now, when it comes time to get paid, real important part, there's no reason to give anybody upfront money if it's all labor. Why am I giving you money if it's all labor? I don't know you. If we were working together and I felt comfortable with you, fine. And I know that you work paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes on Friday you don't have enough that you can bill, but you got to make payroll because you have a helper or two. Okay. Well, let's walk through the house and let's see what was done. We have a value now based on that value. Oh, that's done. Okay, that's worth this amount. That's done. That's done. I can pay you for that because you don't want that contractor to get ahead of you. Now, sometimes you're limited to how you can pay it out because if you do financing, which is the next thing coming up, I know we should be done right now. There's only 3 more slides left, so we're basically done. I'm sure there's some people that had to drop off. I apologize. We should have got done a little faster.
We started a little late, so let's
Yeah.
wrap it up though.
Okay, yeah, there's only 3 slides left. So you can see how that will allow you not to let the contractor get ahead of you, right? Because that becomes the payment scheduling, and it's fair. You pay for what's been done and only what's been done. Financing, you can obviously pay cash. You can finance with hard money. Usually they want a down payment of 10 to 20% of the total cost. Sometimes they'll give you, let's see if it comes up on the next slide. Private lender, usually 75 financing. Okay, so sometimes, let's see, does it come up on the next slide? No, okay. Some of the terms out there today is they'll give you 90% of the acquisition cost. So let's say you're paying $100,000 for the property. They'll lend you 90,000, you put up to 10, and usually they'll make you pay the closing cost as well. Then they'll give you 100% of the rehab cost as long as the two of them together, right, doesn't exceed 65 to 75% of the after repaired value. So here's an example of a true house that Eric and I did in Orlando. Gentleman was going into a nursing home, so he didn't need the house anymore. It was an older house. The purchase price on the house was $35,000. The rehab cost was between 40 and 45. So a total of $80,000 maximum. But the after repaired value was 128, and 65% of 128 is 83.2, which is exactly the check that he wrote out to us. So that was 100% financing. We, in the beginning, when we started, he retired, but he was a financial advisor. When we started with him, he would escrow the money with the title company, and then as something was done, we would then send an invoice to him and copy the title company. And sometimes we send a photograph with it, like the roof's done, whatever. And then she'd release the money. If you're borrowing it from most other places, you're not an individual, they'll charge you for inspections, and you will pre-set up what your drawer schedule is. And so certain things get lumped together. So you need some seed money, or you need a bunch of credit cards, or you need some credit at Home Depot or Lowe's and those kind of places so that you can, get it on credit, then put it in and then get reimbursed. So this is always a reimbursement. So you have to coordinate what the lender's willing to pay you with how you can land that. So that's a little, you get the feel for that, and you start to learn how to handle that. It's not a big deal, but that's how the financing goes. Then the strategies of what you can do, and this is the last slide, is we said that before. Eric and I both said that you can retail it, you can hold for rental, you could fix it and then do a lease option to increase your profits. We've got an educator, Jay O'Connor. I think that's Jay's last name. And he lives in Moorhead, North Carolina, or South Carolina, I think. And he used to do about 50 homes a year. Now he's down to about 25. But every one of the houses that he renovates, he sets up his financing, and he uses only private financing. And he sets it up where he borrows enough. Obviously, he usually gets about 10% more than he needs, so he has enough money. And he sets his payments up for either quarterly, bi-yearly, or is what he does it. And he sets it up that the monthly payment would be less than what he can rent it for. And you can always get $500 more per month on a lease with an option to buy than the going rental rate for that particular home. Why? Because they have the mindset of a buyer, not as a renter. And to give you a lot of flack, hey, why are you charging me $1,500 and everybody else is renting for $1,000? Well, do you want to be a renter, or do you want to buy my house? I want to do both. At the moment, I want to rent it. You told me you're going to lock in the price to sell, but man, come on. All right, I'll tell you what, Johnny. I'll make you this deal if it's really upsetting you. I like you and the wife. You make a nice family. I'll give it to you for the $1,500, but I'll give you a $500 credit towards the purchase price for every month if you exercise the option. For every month that you've paid me the $1,500, I'll give you $500. All they're doing is just giving you an advance towards your profit. Not a big deal. So we can do it that way. So and that's a better way to do it. So what he does is he lease options them for a minimum of a year. He doesn't let them purchase it less than a year, and that way he gets the taxes on it. He gets long-term capital gains. If he sells, he makes $1 million a year or more. He's done that consistently for the last 12 or 13 years. So that puts him in a 37.5% tax bracket. So if he sells them the same year that he buys them, that's how much he's going to pay on it. He's going to pay a lot of taxes. But if he puts it into long-term capital gains at his high tax bracket, he'll pay 20%. The long-term capital gains right now, unless Trump changes it, is zero. If you don't make enough regular money, 15% or 20%. So that's the rate on that. So you could do that, or you can wholesale them. You can do, depending on how you've purchased it, you can put it under contract on a lease with an option to buy and not do any work on it and let them do it. Work for equity, you let your buyer fix it and rehab it. So many different exit strategies that you can do. So that was the last slide that we finished. And like I said, I promised, sorry for finishing it a little bit longer. Next Saturday, meet us for a live feed up if you're going to be around. And then apply today's topics at a real home. The address will be provided the day before on Friday, because if we were to post it on Monday, most of the time these are bank-owned homes that we go look at, and it may be sold come Saturday. So basically, I'm finished, and I'm going to let Eric now show you how you can get these videos and tell you about our JV partnership program. And thank you for staying on longer.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. If you got any quick questions, if not, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. You can open up your mics or type it in the chat. No questions? All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you guys a couple things. All right. So most of you found us through meetup.com. For those of you that didn't, all of our future meetings are posted on meetup.com. So the website is meetup.com/JV partnership. I just put it in the chat for you. So obviously here was today's meeting. Next weekend we'll be meeting at a physical property located here in Central Florida, somewhere in Seminole, Orange County. We'll release that address, like Barry said, on Friday. Starting in May, we're actually going to be doing a four-part section on land trust, our buying subject to, and it's going to start on Monday, May 5th at 7:30. Normally we do every fourth Saturday or every Saturday of the month, but we are still going to do the Saturday meetings. But for a lot of the people, we have this four-part course that we're breaking it down into four different sections because it really takes about 2 to 3 hours to really dive into each one of these. So the first one will be May 5th on land trust, May 6th on buying housing subject to, May 7th talking to the sellers on how to find sub two deals, and then May 8th will be on how to structure them and sell them. So those will be really great for everyone that wants to do sub two. For those of you that are interested in the recordings, you can go to this website here, patreon.com/JV partnership. I'll put that in the chat as well. On here, there's over 30 videos on here as well. So this one right here is the one we just did today, the fix and flip. It's already on there. This is also the four-part section of the subject to ones that we're going to be doing in May. And then the other ones, like this is the one we did last week, how to set up your business with LLCs and land trust. This is the mobile home park one. And a lot of them repeat themselves. Different questions get asked different times. And we'll also be updating this as well with a lot of the new ones that we recorded recently. And then we have our JV partnership program. And also on this website too. So if you just want to have to remember one website versus all three websites, just go to jvpartnership.com. And if you click on Zoom Meetup events, it brings you right to the meetup.com page. And if you click on Zoom recordings, it brings you directly to the Patreon website. So if you want to just have to remember the one website versus all three, just go to jvpartnership.com and you can access the other two websites from there. So the way the partnership program works, this actually spells out a little bit how the partnership works itself and what a partnership program is and how ours work. But basically, we're going to show you how and where to generate leads. We're going to show you what to say to buyers and sellers. We're going to help you formulate your offers. We're going to review all your marketing material, help you get the funds to purchase the property or renovate it if needed. We're going to advise you on all contracts. We're going to review all contracts, review all the closing paperwork. Basically, anything to do with the property, we're going to help you with. So basically, the main responsibility of you as the joint venture partnership member is basically to find leads. So once you've basically have found a seller and you've got that seller interested in saying, "Hey, I'm interested in selling my property," then we'll actually get on a three-way phone call with you and basically close that deal for you. So what you're doing is basically finding sellers that want to sell their houses or commercial properties, no matter what it is, and then we'll actually get on the phone and do the closing call and help close that deal. And sometimes if we got to talk 20 times during the day to get the deal done, we'll do that. A little bit of testimonials about the program, and then at the bottom there's a form to fill out to give us a little bit more information about yourself and basically what type of deals you'd be interested in working on. As we said, we do a little bit of everything. We're not just doing fixing and flipping. We do mobile home parks, land development, multifamily, subject twos, owner financing, lease options. So basically, the way the program works, it can become free for you. We ask for a deposit up front, so you put up the deposit, and then you get that back out of our profits on the first deal. So then the program becomes free. So for example, if we did a fix and flip property and we made $20,000 profit, net profit, you'd get $10,000. We would get $10,000, but out of our $10,000, we'd be giving you back your $6,000 deposit that you put up front, and you never have to put up a deposit for the program again. We continue doing deals as needed, 50-50 split, but you're not selling us 50% of your business. It's only the deals you want help on. So you can call us up and ask us generic questions all day long. How do you structure a subject to? What should I be looking at, for market wise? Any generic questions about real estate, we'll answer them, no problem. Basically, it's a coaching mentoring program by default. But as soon as you ask us about a specific property or have us review a specific contract for a property or speak to a specific seller or anything to do with a specific property in general, Then that property becomes part of the partnership program based on the 5-page agreement that we sign, and then we split the profits 50-50. We can do buy and holds as well, and we split the cash flow as well on that. We also do TC work. I don't have the documents pulled up real quick, but we also do TC packages. So for those of you that are already currently doing deals and want someone to help you coordinate all the paperwork and the contracts and the land trust and make sure everything's done correctly with the title company, we have different packages for that as well. Anything you want to add, Dad?
Yeah, I want to ask everybody, everybody who has not done any kind of real estate deal yet, who hasn't gotten their first deal? One, anybody else?
Yeah, we got a
You
few
can
hands
raise your
raised.
hand or signal it, or just say me in the chat or whatever. Or there's a hand, a flag, you can put the hand signal up. So has anybody else not done one?
Yep, I've got a couple in the chat. Yep,
Okay,
same, yeah.
so
So when you say first deal, do you mean fix and flip or just in general? Just in general, the first deal that you do where there's enough profits to give you, if there's only, for example, $12,000 profit on the deal, you're going to get all of that because you're going to get your 50% of 6,000 and our 50% of 6,000, and we're going to give you back the $6,000 deposit. So if there was only $12,000 profit on the deal, you're getting all of that back. So as long as there's enough profit on the deal to get your deposit back, even if there's less than the profit to give your deposit back, you're still going to get a portion of that deposit back.
okay,
We also do offer payment plans for those of you that the 6,000 might be a little bit of a stretch because we're not in it for the deposit. We're in it for the 50% of the deals you're going to bring us. So that's why we understand we're willing to do a payment plan based on your situation.
okay. So the reason I asked who hasn't done their first deal yet, and if I was to go on, anyway, I don't need to know, but usually if I say, well, why haven't you done your first deal yet? A few different questions go up. Well, I don't know enough yet. I gotta get my LLC set up. I don't have any funds. I've been scared. I haven't gotten my confidence up yet. All different reasons. But those who haven't done a deal yet, if I say, are you gonna do a deal? I think 100% of you would say yes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have wasted your time being on it today or doing anything else. So that being said, it's kind of like a no-brainer if you think about it, that it would be kind of silly for you not to join our program. Uh, we just sold a mobile home park for double what we paid for it, going to make over $500,000 in profit. We did a land subdivision deal, did the same thing. And we have a couple of investors that have there's one particular investor, he's approaching $1 million that he'll be making with us. That's not the typical amount, but he takes action, and we work on bigger things. You're not going to make that kind of money on a single family, but the point is, if you do a single family, and we help you, okay, so the cost of the program is half the profit on your first deal. But isn't it better to get half the first deal than lose money on your first deal? And I can't tell you how many. That's very common, especially on the fix and flips, for sure. On the fix and flips where they get burnt and they never do another deal ever in real estate. They hang up. I'm going to stick doing this. I'm not going to do that. But real estate, that's not for me. So having Eric and I, you now have experts. It would be like as if you were going to start taking all these classes. You don't need to take them. I told you that in the beginning. There isn't a subject out there that you could ask me a question and I'm not going to give you the answer on. I've been doing this for too long. I'm one of the originators when this industry started. It really started in 1980 with Robert Allen, and I got started in 81. So I've been around a long time doing this, and never stopped taking classes. We still take classes, still pay for them. Education is knowledge, but taking action is knowledge. And when you have us in your back pocket, there's no reason to be scared to take action, because we'll probably turn down more deals than we'll approve with you. You're welcome to do the deal if we tell you, but I think, why would you do it if we say stay away from that deal and we tell you why? But if you weren't in our program, you'd go ahead and do it and get stuck. I can't tell you how many times Eric and I are asked by people like on a program like today, can you come out and look at this property we looked at? And it's like, I get you. And it's like, why in the world did you buy this? They had no clue, what they were doing, and they're going to lose their shirt. So it's a no-brainer. If you want to get started in real estate, not only are you going to get your first done deal safely and not lose any money, But now you've got, no matter what, you've got an expert in your back pocket. Isn't that the most important thing? That no matter what type of deal you're going to do, you've got somebody that you could ask. You know, you name any educator that you know out there, and if you could have their cell phone number in that particular genre, whatever they were teaching, wouldn't you feel 100% comfortable to do that deal knowing you could call them? If you were going to do a subject to and you could call Pace directly, or if you were going to do an apartment building, you could call a person, or if you're going to do a self-storage, or you could do a mobile home park, you could call all those gurus. You don't have to call them. Eric and I have that same knowledge. We even have the study programs that we sometimes can lend, whatever. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I'm not going to say it anymore. It's up to you. You can bring the horse to water. You can't make them drink. As Eric said, we're not interested in the 6,000. We're interested in the 500,000, the 100,000, the big deals that we're going to do together. Enough said.
Any other questions? You can open up your mic, or you don't have to put it in the chat. No questions? Let me check the chat. Hold on.
Then we
Can't see
can
the
say
chat right
goodbye.
now. All right. If there's no questions, thank you everybody for coming. And if you're local to Central Florida, we'll be posting the address of where we'll be meeting next Saturday in person. If you're out of state or out of town, if you add me on Facebook, go to Eric Sandhouse and look for me. It's a picture of me and my wife as my profile picture. I will go live on Facebook at the property on Saturday, next Saturday. So for those of you out of the area, you'll be able to. I won't film the whole thing, but I'll film a good portion of it, and you'll be at least be able to see the property, and you'll be able to hear a lot of the stuff that we talk about through the Facebook Live. So for those of you out of town, go ahead and add me on Facebook, and you'll be able to see us next weekend.
And for those of you who observed Passover this week, happy Passover to you. For those of you that are going to observe Easter tomorrow, have a great day. Don't eat too much
Happy Easter.
stuffed
Yep.
egg. We have a big Easter hunt. We celebrate both. My girlfriend, grandchildren, we're going for an Easter party, and Eric and I already celebrated Passover this year. So we wish the best to everybody.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. And for those of you that are local, we'll see you next weekend or see you on Facebook Live.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Good day.
Thank
Yes.
you. You too. Bye-bye.